In the quiet of the night, there is a blue light. It is the only light in the room, and it illuminates a face, perhaps your face. It is the light of a screen, a small window into a vast and turbulent world. With the flick of a thumb, a universe of information scrolls by. A headline about a distant crisis, an image of a friend's perfect vacation, an angry comment thread, an email from work that arrives long after the day has ended. Each item, a tiny pebble dropped into the still waters of your mind. But they are not just pebbles, are they? They are demands. Demands for your attention, your outrage, your envy, your worry. And as the minutes turn into an hour, the water is no longer still. It is a churning sea of anxiety, a sense of being stretched thin, pulled in 100 different directions at once. There is a deep and pervasive feeling of being stuck, of running on a treadmill that gets faster and faster, but leads nowhere. We call this feeling stress, or burnout, or anxiety, but perhaps it is something deeper. It is a spiritual dislocation, a profound sense of losing our own center in the relentless noise of the world. Our joy, which should be a resilient and abiding presence, has become a fragile thing. It feels like a small candle flame, and the modern world is a constant, howling wind, threatening to extinguish it at any moment. We are told that the answer lies outside of us, in the next purchase, the next promotion, the next relationship, the next 1,000 likes. And so we strive, and we grasp, and we accumulate, only to find the feeling of emptiness remains, a quiet hum beneath the noise of our lives. But what if the solution is not to add more, but to find a different way of being? What if there was a path, not of escape, but of engagement with the world, from a place of unshakable inner peace? This is the purpose of a night Dharma talk. It is not a sermon, and it asks you to believe in nothing. It is simply an invitation to turn down the volume of the world for a little while, so that you can begin to hear a quieter, more ancient wisdom, the wisdom of a tradition that has spent 2,500 years studying the nature of the human mind, the causes of its suffering, and the path to its liberation. Think of it not as a religion, but as a practical, psychological toolkit, a set of instructions for building a sanctuary inside yourself, a refuge for your joy, a place so deep and so still that the storms of the world can rage on the surface, but they cannot touch the quiet of the depths. This is a journey to find that quiet, to protect that flame, and to discover the resilient joy that is your birthright. The world feels chaotic, but what is this chaos really? It is not a single, monolithic entity. It is a symphony, or perhaps more accurately, a cacophony, played by many different instruments. The first and most relentless instrument is the sheer volume of information. We live in an age not of information scarcity, but of information overload. A digital fire hose is aimed at our faces from the moment we wake to the moment we fall asleep. News alerts, emails, messages, articles, videos, podcasts. It flows without end. A torrent of data that promises to keep us informed, connected, and ahead. But it often leaves us feeling drowned. Our ancestors might have learned the news of the village once a day, or the news of the kingdom once a month. We learn the news of the entire planet every single second. We are made to feel that we must have an opinion on everything, that we must be aware of every tragedy, every outrage, every new trend, lest we be considered ignorant or apathetic. This constant influx of information, much of it negative and sensationalized, places our nervous system on a permanent, low-level alert. It creates a background hum of anxiety, a feeling that the world is always on the brink of collapse, and we are helpless witnesses to it all. The second instrument in this chaotic orchestra is the culture of perpetual striving, amplified by the hall of mirrors we call social media. We are no longer just keeping up with our immediate neighbors. We are now tasked with keeping up with the curated, filtered, and perfected lives of millions of people online. We scroll through images of entrepreneurial success, of flawless bodies, of exotic travels, of seemingly perfect families. We see the highlight reels of everyone else's life, and we compare them to the behind-the-scenes reality of our own. A seed of inadequacy is planted, a feeling that we are not enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not happy enough. This creates a relentless pressure to perform, to optimize, to project an image of success and happiness. Even when we feel fractured inside, we become brands, curating our own lives for public consumption. And in the process, we can become strangers to ourselves. The goalposts for a good life are always moving, always just out of reach, ensuring that we are never truly content with where we are or who we are. When you combine this information overload with this culture of comparison, the result is a state of being we can call constant reactivity. Our attention, our most precious and finite resource, is no longer our own. It is fractured into 1,000 tiny pieces, pulled this way and that by every notification, every ding, every red bubble. We lose the ability for deep thought, for sustained focus, for the quiet contemplation that is necessary for wisdom and creativity to arise. We react, we don't reflect. We scroll, we don't see. We hear, we don't listen. Our minds are like a shallow pond in a hurricane, the surface in constant agitation, never still enough for the water to become clear. We mistake this constant motion for being alive, this busyness for being important. But in reality, it is a form of exhaustion, a deep soul weariness that comes from never truly being at rest. We begin to believe that this chaos is the fundamental nature of life, and that our only option is to run faster, to shout louder, to simply keep up. There is an old story that speaks to this condition. It is about a wise old farmer who lived in a small village. One day, his only horse, which he used for plowing and transport, ran away. His neighbors all came to console him. "Oh, what terrible luck," they said. "Your only horse is gone. How will you manage?" The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." A week later, the horse returned, and it brought with it a herd of 10 wild horses. The neighbors rushed over to celebrate. "What incredible luck!" they exclaimed. "Now you are a rich man." The farmer, looking at the new horses, just said, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's only son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when it threw him, and he broke his leg. The neighbors came again, shaking their heads. "What awful luck. Your son, your only help, is now injured." The farmer calmly replied, "Maybe." A few weeks passed, and the country went to war. Military officers came to the village to conscript all the able-bodied young men. They took the sons of all the farmer's neighbors, but they left the farmer's son behind because of his broken leg. The neighbors came over, weeping for their own sons, but congratulating the farmer. "What truly wonderful luck," they said. "You were spared." The farmer, looking out at his fields, simply said, "Maybe." This story is not about horses or luck. It is about the nature of the world and our relationship to it. The villagers represent our reactive minds. They are caught in a constant cycle of judgment, immediately labeling every event as good or bad, fortunate or unfortunate. Their inner peace is completely at the mercy of external circumstances. Their happiness is a roller coaster, rising and falling with every change of fortune. The farmer, however, embodies a different kind of wisdom. He is not detached or unfeeling. He simply understands that life is a complex, interconnected web of causes and conditions. An event that seems like a disaster today may be the seed of a blessing tomorrow. A seeming victory may lead to a future sorrow. He withholds his judgment. He does not try to control the events themselves. He does not chase after the horse or curse the wild herd. He understands that trying to control the external world, with all of its infinite variables, is a futile and exhausting battle. This is the first profound truth we must grasp if we are to find peace. The chaos is not the problem. The news is not the problem. The success of others is not the problem. These are simply the events of the world, like the horse running away or the sun breaking his leg. They are neutral. They are just what is happening. The problem, the source of the inner turmoil, the suffering, and the feeling of being overwhelmed, arises from our interaction with these events. It arises from our immediate labeling, our craving for the good things to stay, and our aversion to the bad things. We try to build a dam to stop the river of life from flowing, and we are surprised when we are met with immense pressure and eventual failure. The first step, then, is not to try to quiet the world. That is an impossible task. The world will always be full of events, of noise, of comings and goings. The first step is to turn our gaze inward and to ask a simple question. If the storm outside is just weather, where is the hurricane inside of me truly coming from? This question leads us away from the impossible task of changing the world and toward the possible and profoundly liberating task of understanding our own mind. We have looked outward and we have seen the chaos of the world. We have seen the storm of information, the winds of expectation, and the rain of comparison. And we have arrived at a profound realization, guided by the wisdom of the old farmer. The storm itself is not the source of our suffering. The events of the world are like the weather. They simply are. So, we must turn our gaze around. We must close the shutters to the outside world for a moment and dare to look into the room of our own mind. What we find there, in the unfiltered quiet, is often more chaotic, more turbulent than anything happening outside. We find that the true storm, the one that soaks us to the bone, has been raging within us all along. The ancient teachers of the East had a wonderfully precise name for this inner state. They called it the monkey mind. It is a perfect metaphor. Picture a restless monkey trapped in a vast temple. It never sits still. It shrieks and chatters, and with boundless, frantic energy, it swings from one branch to another. It leaps from a statue's head to a hanging tapestry, from a window ledge to a dangling rope, never pausing, never at peace. Our mind is just like this. The branches it swings from are our thoughts. One moment, it swings to a branch in the deep past, replaying a conversation from last week, analyzing what we should have said. It feels the sting of an old regret, the warmth of a faded memory, or the heat of a lingering resentment. The next moment, before we have even taken a breath, it swings far into the future. It rehearses an upcoming meeting. It imagines 1,000 potential disasters. It frets about finances, about health, about the lives of our loved ones. It creates entire movies of what might go wrong, complete with a script, a soundtrack, and a full cast of characters. The monkey mind rarely, if ever, wants to rest on the one branch where life is actually happening, the branch of the present moment. It is either lost in the ghosts of what has been, or haunted by the phantoms of what might be. This ceaseless swinging is utterly exhausting. It is the engine of our anxiety. Think about the nature of worry. Worry cannot exist without the mind projecting itself into the future and creating a negative outcome. Think about regret. Regret cannot exist without the mind anchoring itself to the past and judging it. The suffering is not in the present moment itself. The suffering is in the mind's frantic, uncontrolled journey away from it. These are not just fleeting, harmless thoughts. They are powerful, creative acts. A single thought, arising in the mind, is like a stone tossed into a pond. It creates ripples. An anxious thought, what if they don't like me, does not remain an abstract idea. It immediately sends ripples through the body. The shoulders tighten, the stomach clenches, the heart beats a little faster. The body believes the thought and begins to live out its reality. A sad thought, a memory of loss, can bring tears to the eyes and a heavy ache to the chest. The body lives the memory as if it were happening right now. Our inner world, our emotional landscape, is continuously being sculpted, moment by moment, by the quality of our thoughts. When the monkey mind is in control, it is a careless and often cruel sculptor, creating statues of fear, anxiety, and sorrow, and forcing us to live among them. A great Thai meditation master, Ajahn Chah, offered a beautiful analogy for this predicament. He said the mind is like a pool of water. Throughout our lives, people and events constantly throw dirt, leaves, and mud into this pool. This is inevitable. This is the nature of living. Our instinctive reaction, when we see the water becoming cloudy and unclear, is to panic. We want to clean it, so we jump into the pool and start thrashing around. We grab at the mud, trying to separate it from the water. We stir and swirl, hoping to force the water to be clear. But what is the result of all this frantic effort? The water only becomes murkier. The sediment is stirred up from the bottom. The clarity is lost completely, and we are left exhausted and standing in a muddy mess. This is what we do with our minds. A difficult thought or a painful emotion arises, and we immediately try to fix it. We argue with the thought. We try to suppress the feeling. We distract ourselves. We analyze it endlessly. We stir the pool. We make it worse. The wisdom of the path, Ajahn Chah taught, is to do the opposite. It is to do nothing at all. It is to sit quietly on the bank of the pool and simply let it be. It requires trust, a trust in the nature of water itself. If you stop stirring, if you allow the water to be still, the mud and the dirt will, of their own accord, slowly, gently, begin to settle. They will drift to the bottom, leaving the water above to regain its natural inherent clarity. The mind is the same. It has a natural state of clarity, brightness, and peace. It is our frantic meddling, our desperate attempt to control every thought and feeling that keeps it in a state of turmoil. The practice is not about fighting the mind. It is about learning to be still and allowing the mind to heal itself. This leads us to the most liberating discovery a human being can make. You are not your thoughts. You are not the monkey, and you are not the storm. You are the one who is aware of them. There is a classic image used to describe this: the sky and the clouds. Your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations, they are like clouds. They drift into view, they take on different shapes and colors. They linger for a while, and then they drift away. Some days the sky is full of dark, heavy, thunderous clouds. Other days it is filled with light, wispy, beautiful clouds. Sometimes it is perfectly clear, but through all of it, the sky remains the sky. The sky is not damaged by the storm. The sky is not attached to the beautiful, fluffy clouds. It does not try to hold on to them, nor does it try to push the dark clouds away. It is the vast, open, silent space in which all the weather of our life happens. Our true nature is this sky-like awareness. The great error we make, the source of so much of our inner struggle, is that we believe we are the clouds. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we say, "I am sad." We merge with it. We become the sadness. When a thundercloud of anger rolls in, we say, "I am angry," and we become the storm. The spiritual path begins with a simple, radical shift in identity. It is the practice of remembering that you are the sky, not the cloud. The practice is to notice the thought without becoming the thought. When a wave of anxiety washes over you, instead of being swept away by it, you can learn to say to yourself, "Ah, I am aware of a feeling of anxiety arising." This simple act of noticing creates a space. It is a tiny gap of freedom between the observer and the observed. In that space, there is peace. In that space, you are not the captive of the monkey mind, but the calm witness to its antics. In that space, you are not drowning in the muddy pool, but sitting peacefully on its bank, watching the sediment slowly settle. This inner storm, this ceaseless mental chatter, this mistaken identity with the clouds of our own mind has a name. It is the fundamental diagnosis of the human condition offered by the Buddha. It is the starting point for all true healing. He called it dukkha. We have peered into the inner chamber of the mind and witnessed the frantic antics of the monkey, the constant swinging between past and future that generates the inner storm. This state of affairs, this background hum of agitation, this subtle and sometimes not so subtle sense of things being not quite right, has a name. In the language of the Buddha, it is called dukkha. This single word is the foundation of the entire path, and it is perhaps one of the most profoundly misunderstood terms in all of Eastern philosophy. It is often translated into English simply as suffering, but this translation is too heavy, too simplistic. It paints a picture of a philosophy that is grim, pessimistic, and life-denying. When we hear the word suffering, we think of terrible tragedy, of intense physical pain, of deep, wrenching grief. And dukkha certainly includes these things. But it is also so much more. It is far more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately woven into the very fabric of our lives. Imagine you are driving a beautiful cart, pulled by a strong horse on a long journey, but one of the wheels is just slightly off-center. It is not broken. The cart still moves forward, but with every rotation, there is a slight wobble, a persistent, annoying squeak, a subtle vibration that runs through the entire frame. On a smooth road, you might barely notice it, but it is always there. On a bumpy road, the vibration becomes a violent shake. The squeak becomes a deafening screech. Dukkha is this off-center wheel. It is the inherent unsatisfactoriness, the fundamental friction of a life that is out of alignment with reality. To truly understand it, we must look at its three distinct forms, moving from the most obvious to the most profound. The first form is called dukkha dukkha. This is the suffering of pain, the one we all recognize. It is the headache that throbs behind your eyes. It is the sharp sting of a cruel word. It is the ache of loneliness in a quiet house. It is the anxiety that knots your stomach before a difficult conversation. It is the profound grief that hollows you out when you lose someone you love. This is the raw, undeniable, painful part of being a sentient creature with a sensitive body and a tender heart. There is no mystery to this kind of suffering. It is the part of the human condition we would all avoid if we could. It is the cart hitting a large, unavoidable rock in the road, sending a jarring shock through our whole system. The second form is far more subtle. It is called viparinama dukkha. This is the suffering of change. Paradoxically, this form of dukkha arises from our moments of happiness. It is the hidden anxiety that is woven into every pleasant experience. Think of the most perfect, blissful day of a vacation. The sun is warm, the sea is calm, the company is perfect. It is wonderful. But in the back of the mind, isn't there a tiny, quiet voice that whispers, "This has to end"? The knowledge that you must eventually pack your bags, go to the airport, and return to ordinary life casts a subtle shadow over the brightness of the present moment. Think of a delicious meal. The pleasure of the first bite is immense, but it immediately begins to fade, and the meal itself is soon over. We love our bodies when they are young and strong, but we know, with an uncomfortable certainty, that they will age, they will weaken, they will sicken. This is the suffering of change. It is the pain that comes not from pain, but from the impermanent nature of pleasure. We grasp, we cling, we try to hold on to happy moments, beautiful things, and joyful states of being, as if trying to hold a handful of water. The tighter we squeeze, the faster it slips through our fingers. This clinging to what is inevitably fleeting is a primary source of our anxiety. It is the constant, low-grade tension of knowing that the smooth part of the road will eventually end. The third form is the deepest and most pervasive. It is called sankhara dukkha. This is the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the off-balance wheel itself. It is the background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is part of being a self in a complex world. Even when there is no overt pain, and even when there is no immediate pleasure to lose, there can be a sense of incompleteness, a feeling of, is this all there is? It is the stress of simply maintaining our identity, of defending our ego, of navigating the endless demands and complexities of life. It is the inherent vulnerability of an existence that is dependent on countless conditions we cannot control, from the cells in our body to the global economy. It is the friction of being a composite being, a temporary collection of physical and mental processes, pretending to be a solid, permanent thing. This is the subtle, existential angst that can surface on a quiet Tuesday afternoon for no reason at all. It is the fundamental instability of our cart, which we spend our whole lives trying to ignore, decorating it with flowers and polishing its frame, all to distract from the ever-present wobble. To speak of these things, to look so directly at the nature of our dissatisfaction, can seem pessimistic, but it is the absolute opposite. It is an act of supreme courage and radical optimism. Imagine going to a physician because you have felt unwell for years. A pessimistic doctor might say, "Oh, that's just life. There's nothing to be done." But a great physician, a true healer, would perform a thorough and honest examination. They would name the illness precisely. They would say, "This is the condition. This is its nature." That diagnosis is not a cause for despair. It is the essential first step toward a cure. It is a moment of profound hope. The Buddha was this great physician of the mind. In presenting the first noble truth of dukkha, he was not saying that life is miserable. He was saying, "I see your discomfort. I see the wobble in the wheel. I have examined it. I understand it. And I am telling you, it does not have to be this way." But first, we must be brave enough to admit that the wheel is, in fact, off balance. There is a story that illustrates this with heartbreaking beauty. A young woman named Kisa Gautami lost her infant son. Consumed by a grief so powerful, it drove her to madness. She refused to believe he was dead. She carried his small body through her village, going from house to house, begging for a medicine that could bring him back. Some mocked her, some pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, someone directed her to the Buddha. She laid her son at his feet and pleaded for the magical cure. The Buddha looked at her with immense compassion. He did not dismiss her. He did not tell her to simply accept reality. He gave her a task. He said, "There is only one medicine that can help. Go and bring me back a single mustard seed. But it must be from a house where no one, not a parent, not a child, not a spouse, not a servantess ever died." Filled with a desperate hope, Kisa Gotami began her search. She went to the first house. "Can you spare a mustard seed for my son's medicine?" "Of course," the woman of the house said. "But have you known death in this house?" The woman's face fell. "Oh yes. We lost our beloved father just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. "We have plenty of mustard seeds, but our sister died. We have seeds, but we lost our youngest child. We have seeds, but our master passed away." House after house, she learned the geography of human sorrow. As the day wore on, her personal, isolating, overwhelming grief began to transform. She realized that her pain was not a unique curse. It was a shared inheritance. The cloak of sorrow she wore was a garment that had been worn by every single person she met. Her heart broke open, not just for her son, but for all of humanity. She finally understood. She went to the forest, buried her son, and returned to the Buddha, not for the seed, but for the teaching. She had found the medicine, not in a magical cure for death, but in the universal truth of dukkha. This is the power of the First Noble Truth. It is not a doctrine of despair. It is a compassionate embrace of reality. It is the end of our isolation. It tells us that the wobble in our wheel is not a personal failing. It is part of the design. And once we have the courage to see it, to name it, to understand its different forms, we can finally ask the most important question a human being can ask. If this is the diagnosis, what is the cause? And what is the cure? Having looked with courage upon the diagnosis of our condition, the pervasive, off-balance nature of existence we call dukkha, we are now ready for the physician's next step. A diagnosis, no matter how precise, is incomplete without an understanding of the cause. If we are to heal, we must know the source of the ailment. The Buddha, in his profound investigation of the human heart, identified this source with unwavering clarity. The cause of dukkha, the engine that spins the wobbly wheel of suffering, is a single, powerful force. In the Pali language, it is called tanha. This word translates literally as thirst. It is a perfect description. It is not a gentle want or a mild preference. It is a deep, primal, burning thirst. It is the insatiable craving that silently directs our lives, the force that compels us to move towards what we desire and away from what we fear. This thirst is the unseen puppeteer, and we are often its unwitting marionettes. This force of tanha has two fundamental expressions, like the opposite poles of a powerful magnet. The first is craving. This is the pull. It is the relentless desire to grasp, to possess, to experience pleasant things. It is the voice that whispers, "I need this to be happy." The other pole is aversion. This is the push. It is the equally relentless desire to avoid, to resist, to escape unpleasant things. It is the voice that screams, "I cannot bear this." Our entire, unexamined life can be seen as a frantic dance between these two poles. We lurch from a pleasant experience, clinging to it desperately, trying to make it last, to a difficult experience, pushing it away with all our might, trying to make it disappear. This constant pulling and pushing, this tensing and resisting, is the very definition of stress. It is the friction that creates the heat of our suffering. It is the very action of stirring the muddy pool, ensuring it never has a chance to become clear. To understand this thirst more deeply, we must look at its three distinct flavors, the three channels through which it flows. The first and most familiar is kama tanha, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving that is tied to our five senses and our mind. It is the thirst for a beautiful sight, a captivating melody, a fragrant scent, a delicious taste, a pleasant touch, or an interesting idea. In our modern world, this thirst has been amplified into a deafening roar. It is the engine of our consumer culture. It is the desire for the next smartphone, the next fashion trend, the new car. It is the craving for the sweet taste of sugar, the intoxicating effect of alcohol, the dopamine hit of a notification on our phone. It is the endless scrolling through images and videos, seeking the next momentary distraction, the next fleeting jolt of pleasure. The problem is not that pleasure is inherently bad. A beautiful sunset is a joy to behold. A delicious meal is a gift. The problem lies in the thirst itself. It is a bottomless cup. The pleasure from one experience fades almost as soon as it arises, and the thirst immediately demands another. We are led to believe that if we can just get enough pleasant experiences, we will finally be satisfied. But it is a lie. The satisfaction is always temporary, and the underlying thirst remains, unquenched, ready to drive us towards the next object of desire. The second, and more subtle flavor, is bhavatanya, the thirst for existence, for becoming. This is a deeper, more existential craving. It is not just the thirst for a fleeting pleasure, it is the thirst for a solid and lasting identity. It is the ego's relentless project. It is the voice that says, I will be happy when I am successful. I will be worthy when I am admired. I will be at peace when I have achieved this goal. It is the craving to become a better version of ourselves, a more enlightened person, a more productive worker, a more loving parent. It is the deep desire for our story, our sense of self, to be important, to be validated, and to continue. This is the thirst that fuels ambition, the desire for fame, status, and power. It is also the thirst that fuels our fear of failure, our anxiety about our legacy, and our terror of being insignificant, a nobody. We are addicted to the process of becoming because we believe that our current state of being is not enough. We are constantly constructing and defending a version of me, hoping that one day we will perfect it, and it will finally bring us lasting peace. But we are trying to build a permanent statue out of shifting sand. The third flavor is the shadow of the second. It is called vibhavatana, the thirst for non-existence, for annihilation. When the pain of existence becomes too great, when the first two thirsts lead only to frustration and despair, this dark craving can arise. It is the ultimate act of aversion. It is the desperate desire to not be. In its common forms, it is the craving to annihilate a painful feeling. It is the urge to numb ourselves with alcohol, drugs, food, or mindless entertainment. It is the desire to escape our own mind, to sleep, to just make the pain stop. When we say, I can't take this anymore, we are in the grip of vibhavatana. In its most extreme form, it is the suicidal urge, the belief that the only way to end the suffering is to end the self that is experiencing it. It is the final, desperate attempt to push away our experience so forcefully that we wish to destroy the experiencer. It is the ultimate expression of the belief that our inner world is unbearable and that escape is the only option. There is a powerful and unsettling parable that captures the self-destructive nature of Tana. It is the story of a stray dog, starving and desperate. One day, it finds a bone. It is an old bone, bleached white by the sun, completely dry, and without a single shred of meat or marrow. The dog, driven by its immense hunger, does not see this. It takes the bone to a quiet corner and begins to gnaw on it with ferocious intensity. It works for hours, scraping its teeth on the hard, dry surface. Its gums become raw and begin to bleed. The dog tastes the warm metallic flavor of its own blood, and in its delusion, it believes it is finally getting nourishment from the bone. This taste of its own blood only encourages it to chew harder, to work more furiously, making its own gums bleed even more, all the while convinced that its salvation lies in this lifeless, empty object. We are that dog. The dry bones are the fleeting pleasures, the egoic ambitions, and the empty promises that the world offers us. We chase them, we grasp them, we work ourselves to the point of exhaustion for them. The anxiety, the stress, the jealousy, the fear we experience in this chase is the blood from our own gums. We mistake this taste of our own suffering for a sign that we are getting closer to true nourishment. We think the pain of striving is the price of happiness, when in reality, the striving itself is the core of our unhappiness. This teaching is not a call to renounce the world or to live a life devoid of pleasure and accomplishment. The Buddha was not a Puritan. The problem is not the bone. The problem is the dog's deluded, desperate, and self-harming relationship to the bone. The problem is not money, success, or love. The problem is the thirst, the clinging, the desperate attachment to these things as the source of our ultimate happiness. So now, the great physician has laid it all bare. The diagnosis is dukkha, off-balance wheel, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness. The cause is tanha, burning thirst, the frantic pulling and pushing that keeps the wheel spinning. Seeing this cause so clearly is not a reason for hopelessness. It is the moment the light breaks through. If we know what powers the engine of our suffering, we can learn how to quiet it. If our turmoil is caused by our own craving and aversion, then it lies within our power to change it. This is not a curse, but a profound opportunity. It means that the key to our own freedom is, and always has been, in our own hands. The recognition that there is a cause implies, with unshakable logical certainty, that there can be a cessation. This hopeful possibility, this path to quenching the thirst, is the promise of the third noble truth. We have walked the physician's path. We have faced the diagnosis of dukkha, the fundamental off-balance nature of our lives. We have uncovered its cause in tanha, the burning thirst of craving and aversion that keeps us chasing shadows and fleeing from ghosts. The diagnosis is clear. The origin is known. And now, we stand at a crucial turning point. The mind naturally asks, what is to be done? How do we begin the work of healing? How do we calm the frantic engine of thirst? The answer provided by the great physician of the mind is not a complex theory, not an intellectual puzzle to be solved. It is something far more simple, more immediate, and more accessible than we can possibly imagine. The first step on the path to peace, the foundational tool for calming the inner storm, is the one thing that has been with you every moment of your life. It is your own breath. This practice, the cornerstone of mental cultivation, is known as anapanasati. Ana means in-breath, apana means out-breath, and sati means mindfulness. It is, simply, the practice of maintaining a calm, steady awareness of the process of breathing. This sounds almost too simple to be effective. How can something so basic possibly be the antidote to the profound existential angst we have just described? Its power lies precisely in its simplicity. The monkey mind, as we have seen, thrives on complexity and movement. Swinging wildly from the tangled branches of the past, to the hazy branches of the future. The breath does the opposite. It offers a single, stable anchor in the vibrant, living reality of the present moment. To turn our attention to the breath is to gently but firmly invite the monkey mind to come down from the branches, to sit still for a moment, and to find its rest. So, how do we begin? First, there is no need for a special posture or a sacred cushion, though it can be helpful to sit in a way that is both comfortable and dignified. You can sit in a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your spine upright but not rigid. The posture of the body reflects the intention of the mind, alert yet relaxed. Allow your eyes to gently close, or if you prefer, rest your gaze softly on a spot on the floor a few feet in front of you. And then, bring your attention to the simple fact that you are breathing. There is a crucial instruction here, perhaps the most important of all. Do not try to control your breath. This is not a breathing exercise. You are not trying to make your breath deeper, or slower, or better in any way. Your only task is to become a curious, gentle observer of the breath. Exactly as it is, you are stepping back and watching a natural process unfold. A process that has been happening on its own since the moment you were born. To help the mind settle, you can rest your awareness on a single spot where the physical sensation of the breath is most clear to you. For some, this is at the tip of the nostrils. You can feel the subtle coolness of the air as it enters and the slight warmth as it leaves. For others, the sensation is more vivid in the chest, feeling the gentle expansion and contraction. For others still, it is the abdomen, feeling the soft rise on the in-breath and the gentle fall on the out-breath. There is no right or wrong spot. Simply choose one and let your attention rest there, as you would rest your hand on a sleeping animal. Feel the entire journey of a single breath. Notice the very beginning of the in-breath. Feel it as it fills the lungs, and notice the tiny pause before it turns. Then feel the beginning of the out-breath. Follow it all the way to its end, and notice the stillness in the space before the next breath begins. You are simply knowing, I am breathing in, and knowing, I am breathing out. Now, a promise, your mind will wander. It will drift away from the breath 100 times, 1,000 times. A thought will arise. A sound from outside will catch your attention. A memory will surface. An itch will demand to be scratched. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign of failure. It is simply the nature of the untrained mind. It is what minds do. The true practice is not about forcing the mind to stay on the breath. The true practice happens in the moment you realize it has wandered. That moment of realizing, my mind is no longer on the breath. It is thinking about my to-do list. That moment is the moment of mindfulness. It is a moment of pure, non-judgmental awareness. And in that moment, what do? You do not scold yourself. You do not get frustrated. You do not judge yourself as a bad meditator. With the gentleness and patience you would use with a small child or a young puppy, you simply acknowledge where the mind has gone, and then you gently, lovingly guide it back to the anchor of the breath. That is all. The practice is this rhythm of wandering, realizing, and gently returning, over and over and over again. Each return is a victory. Each return is a strengthening of the muscle of mindfulness. Why is this simple act so transformative? Why is the breath the perfect anchor? Firstly, it is always with you. You do not need any special equipment, any particular belief system, or any quiet, secluded place. In a traffic jam, in a stressful meeting, in the middle of a difficult conversation, your breath is there. Your anchor to the present moment is always available, a portable sanctuary you can access at any time. Secondly, the breath exists only in the now. You cannot breathe the breath you took 5 minutes ago. You cannot breathe the breath you will take in an hour. To be aware of your breath is, by definition, to be in the present moment. It is the perfect antidote to the time-traveling monkey mind. It brings you home from the realms of regret and anxiety to the only place where life is actually lived. Finally, the breath is a direct bridge to our nervous system. The rhythm of the breath and the state of the mind are intimately connected. When we are anxious or frightened, our breath becomes short and shallow. When we are calm and relaxed, our breath is slow and deep. The connection works both ways. By bringing a calm, steady awareness to the breath, we send a powerful signal to our entire being that we are safe. We are signaling that it is okay to stand down from high alert. The frantic energy of the fight or flight response begins to quiet down, and the body's natural state of rest and healing can emerge. Imagine a great, ancient tree standing in an open field. A powerful storm arrives. The wind howls, the rain lashes down, and the sky is filled with lightning and thunder. The leaves of the tree are torn and thrown about. The smaller branches are whipped back and forth violently. If you were to focus only on a single leaf, you would think it was being destroyed, lost in the chaos. This is our mind when we are identified with our thoughts and emotions, a single leaf tossed about in the storm of life. But the practice of returning to the breath is like consciously shifting your awareness from that single fluttering leaf down along the shaking branch and further down the strong, thick trunk of the tree. And you go even further, down into the deep, silent roots that are sunk into the cool, dark, unwavering earth. The storm still rages at the surface. The leaves are still being battered. But here, at the root, there is a profound stability. There is a deep, quiet strength. There is peace. The breath is our root system. It connects us to the unshakable ground of the present moment, even when the weather of our life is turbulent. This practice of anchoring is the first essential skill. It does more than just calm us in the moment. It is a form of mental training. With each gentle return to the breath, we are cultivating a powerful new capacity. We are learning to notice the activity of our mind without being its slave. We are learning to see the thoughts without becoming the thoughts. As this muscle of awareness strengthens, we can begin to apply it to more than just the breath. We can start to watch the entire landscape of our inner world with the same calm, non-judgmental attention. We are moving from being the single leaf tossed in the wind to becoming the stable, rooted tree. We are preparing to become the silent watcher on the hill, capable of seeing the whole storm for what it is, without being swept away. Having learned to quiet the mind by tethering it to the gentle, rhythmic anchor of the breath, we have found a place of refuge, a small, calm harbor in the midst of the storm. This is a profound first step. It is the act of learning to stay afloat. But the spiritual path does not end with simply staying afloat in a safe harbor. It invites us to lift the anchor, to develop the skill and the confidence to navigate the vast, unpredictable ocean of life itself. The practice now expands. We move from a narrow focus on a single object, the breath toe, a broad, open, panoramic awareness that embraces everything. This is the cultivation of what is called bare awareness. It is the practice of becoming the silent, unwavering watcher on the hill. From this vantage point, we do not participate in the battles raging in the valley below, nor do we run from them. We simply see it all, with clarity, with equanimity, and with a deep and compassionate understanding. To begin this journey, we must first make a crucial distinction, one that is perhaps the most important in the entire landscape of inner work. It is the distinction between being lost in thought and being aware that you are thinking. For most of our lives, we live in the first state. We are completely identified with the stream of our thoughts, feelings, and sensations. Imagine you are in a movie theater, watching a gripping film. You are so absorbed in the story that you forget you are in a theater. You are no longer an audience member. You have become the main character. When the character is in peril, your heart pounds with fear. When the character experiences love, your heart swells with joy. The movie is your reality. You are inside the dream, unaware that you are dreaming. This is the normal human state. A thought arises in the mind, a thought of worry, like, what if I lose my job? And we immediately become that worry. We are no longer a person having a thought. We are the fearful, anxious person whose world is about to collapse. The thought is not an object we are observing. It is the very lens through which we are seeing the world. A lens that colors everything in the dark shades of fear. Now, imagine a shift. Still in the same theater, watching the same movie, a moment of awareness dawns. You suddenly become conscious of the fact that you are sitting in a plush red seat. You can feel the slight stickiness of the armrest. You can hear the faint hum of the projector behind you. You can smell the popcorn in the air. You are still watching the movie, and it is still compelling, but you are no longer lost in it. You are aware of the screen as a screen. You have woken up from the dream. You have shifted from being the character to being the audience. This is bare awareness. When that same thought of worry arises, what if I lose my job? The mind that is trained in awareness does not immediately become the worry. Instead, a part of the mind is able to stand back and note, here is a thought of worry. Here is the feeling of fear in the chest that comes with it. The thought is seen for what it is, a transient mental event, a cloud passing through the vast sky of the mind. It is not an absolute truth. It is not you. This simple shift from I am anxious to I am aware of a feeling of anxiety is the difference between being a prisoner and holding the key to your own cell. This practice of the watcher on the hill unfolds across three primary domains: the body, the heart, and the mind. We begin with the body, our most immediate, tangible reality. The body is the physical canvas upon which our inner life is painted. We can learn to observe the landscape of bodily sensations with the same gentle curiosity we brought to the breath. You can at any moment drop your awareness into your hands. Without moving them, simply feel them. What is actually there? Perhaps a sense of warmth or coolness, a subtle tingling, a vibration, a feeling of aliveness. Perhaps you can feel the contact with the air or the pressure where they rest on your lap. This is not a thought about your hands. It is the direct, raw data of experience. We can extend this awareness throughout the entire body, a practice known as a body scan. We travel through the landscape of ourselves, from the soles of our feet to the crown of our head, not looking for anything special, but simply noticing what is present. An ache in the shoulder, a feeling of relaxation in the jaw, a fluttering in the stomach. We learn that our emotions have a distinct physical signature. Anxiety is not just a concept, it is a tightness in the throat, a clenching in the gut. Anger is not just an idea, it is a heat that rises in the face, a tension that grips the fists. Sadness is a physical weight, a heaviness in the limbs. By learning to observe these sensations as pure, physical energy, without immediately adding the mental story by feeling heat in the face, instead of, I am so angry at him, we rob the emotion of its fuel. We experience it directly, without judgment, and in doing so, we allow it to move through us and dissipate, rather than getting stuck and turning into a mood that can poison our entire day. From the body, we move to the domain of the heart, the world of feelings and emotions. These are often the most powerful forces in our lives, the weather systems that determine our inner climate. The practice of bare awareness invites us to become a wise meteorologist of our own heart. When a feeling arises, joy, sadness, irritation, jealous, your habitual tendency is to either grasp it or push it away. If it is a pleasant feeling, we cling to it, desperate for it to stay, which creates its own anxiety. If it is an unpleasant feeling, we resist it, deny it, or distract ourselves from it, which only gives it more power. Bare awareness offers a third way. It is the way of radical acceptance. We meet the feeling with a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity. When anger arises, instead of acting it out or suppressing it, we can turn towards it and ask, what is this? What does anger actually feel like? We investigate it with the patient interest of a scientist. Where is it located in my body? Does it have a color, a temperature, a texture? Is it solid, or is it vibrating? By meeting the feeling with this kind attention, we stop fighting with it. We give it space to exist. And what we discover is that no feeling is permanent. It is like a wave in the ocean. It arises, it crests, and if we allow it to, it will inevitably fall and dissolve back into the sea. This practice protects us from what the Buddhists call the second arrow. The first arrow is the initial, unavoidable pain of life, the sadness, the fear, the disappointment. We cannot always avoid the first arrow, but the second arrow is the one we shoot at ourselves. It is our reaction to the first arrow. We feel sad, and then we shoot ourselves with a second arrow of judgment. I shouldn't be sad. I need to be stronger. We feel angry, and we shoot a second arrow. I'm a terrible person for feeling this way. Bare awareness is the practice of letting the first arrow land without reaching for the quiver to shoot the second. Finally, we turn our awareness to the domain of the mind itself, the ceaseless stream of thoughts. This is often the most challenging domain, as we are so deeply identified with our thinking process. Here, the metaphors are helpful. You can imagine yourself sitting on the bank of a river. The thoughts are leaves, logs, and other debris floating by on the current. Your practice is to simply sit and watch them float by, without jumping into the river to grab onto them. A memory of breakfast floats by. A worry about a future meeting floats by. A judgment about another person floats by. A fantasy about a vacation floats by. You just watch. You do not try to stop the river, and you do not get carried away by its current. To aid in this, we can use a gentle technique of noting or labeling. When you notice the mind has been caught by a thought, you can softly, internally, label its category. If you are thinking about your to-do list, you can just note, planning. If you are worrying about the future, worrying. If you are replaying an old argument, remembering. If you are criticizing yourself, judging. This simple act is incredibly powerful. It is like being a librarian in the vast library of your mind. Instead of being forced to read every word of every book, you are simply stamping them with their genre fiction, history, horror, and placing them on the shelf. The act of labeling creates an immediate distance, preventing you from getting lost in the content of the thought and allowing you to see the process of thinking itself. There is a profound Zen story that perfectly illustrates the freedom that is born from this practice. A man was in his small boat, rowing across a wide river on a misty morning. The world was quiet and still, and he was in a contemplative mood. Suddenly, With a loud thud, another boat crashed into the side of his. The man's meditative state was shattered, replaced by an immediate flash of hot anger. "Who is this idiot?" he thought. "How could someone be so careless on such a wide river?" He turned, ready to scream insults at the person in the other boat. But as he looked, he saw that the other boat was empty. There was no one in it. It had simply come unmoored from the bank upstream and had been carried down by the current, bumping into his boat by pure chance. In that instant, all of his anger vanished. It had nowhere to go. His rage was built upon a story about a foolish and inconsiderate person who had wronged him. But when he saw that the boat was empty, the story collapsed, and the anger, which was entirely dependent on that story, dissolved with it. This is the great insight of the watcher on the hill. Most of the things that bump into us in life are empty boats. The person who cuts you off in traffic is not thinking about you at all. They are lost in their own world of stress and distraction, an empty boat. The colleague who makes a curt remark is not necessarily attacking your worth. They may be dealing with a difficult situation at home in an empty boat. The negative news headline is not a personal assault. It is just information being carried on the current of the world. Our suffering is rarely caused by the bump itself. It is caused by the story we instantly create about the bump, the story about the malicious, stupid, or evil person in the other boat. Bare awareness is the practice of learning to see the bump clearly before we have a chance to write the story. It allows us to see the empty boat for what it is. It creates a space between the event and our reaction to it. This space is the soil in which all our freedom grows. The psychologist and Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl wrote, "Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." The entire practice of bare awareness, of being the watcher on the hill, is the art of expanding that sacred space, that sacred pause. The old, conditioned pattern is instantaneous. Stimulus leads directly to reaction. A criticism leads to defensiveness. A desire leads to grasping. A fear leads to avoidance. It is a robotic, unconscious reflex, but with mindfulness, a new pattern becomes possible. Stimulus, followed by the sacred pause of awareness, which then leads to a chosen response. In that pause, we see the empty boat. We feel the heat rising in our own body. We watch the angry thought formulate in our mind. And because we see it all, we are no longer compelled by it. We are free. We can choose to take a breath. We can choose to respond with kindness. We can choose to do nothing at all. This direct, experiential seeing is more than a clever psychological technique. It is a profound spiritual insight. It is the living proof that our suffering is not a solid, monolithic thing. It is a process, a pattern of conditioned reactions. And by bringing the light of awareness to these patterns, we begin to dissolve them. We see, in our own experience, that peace is possible, that freedom from our own reactivity is not a distant, mythical goal, but a living reality that can be tasted in every moment we choose to pause, to watch, and to see clearly. This direct seeing, this taste of liberation, is the confirmation of the Buddha's most hopeful message, that an end to suffering is possible. It is the gateway to the third noble truth. We have followed the path of the great physician. We have looked with unflinching honesty at the diagnosis of our shared condition, the subtle, pervasive friction of dukkha. We have peered into its origin, uncovering the relentless engine of thirst, of tanha, that drives our inner turmoil. We have even begun to apply the first elements of the treatment, learning to anchor our wandering minds in the simple, steady presence of the breath, and learning to watch the inner storm with the calm, spacious awareness of the watcher on the hill. And in these practices, we may have already tasted fleeting moments of peace, tiny gaps of freedom in the chatter of the mind. These moments are not an accident. They are a signpost. They are pointing the way towards the physician's ultimate promise, the most hopeful and revolutionary message in the entire teaching. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. It is the simple, radical, and life-altering declaration that there is an end to suffering. This is the point where the path turns from diagnosis to prognosis, from a description of the problem to a guarantee of the solution. The word Nirodha means cessation or extinction. It points to the possibility of a complete and total end to the unsatisfactoriness, the anxiety, and the stress that we have been exploring. The state that results from this cessation is known by a more famous word, nirvana. But like dukkha, the word nirvana is burdened by centuries of misunderstanding. When we hear it, our minds, conditioned by Western concepts, might imagine a kind of heaven, a paradise in the clouds, where we go after we die. Or perhaps we imagine a state of blissful emptiness, a trance-like void where all personality and feeling are snuffed out. The third noble truth tells us that nirvana is neither of these things. It is not a place you go to. It is not a reward for being good. And it is certainly not a state of nothingness. Its literal meaning is the key. Nirvana means to extinguish, or to blow out, as one would blow out a candle flame. The crucial question then is, what is being extinguished? The teaching is very precise about this. What is extinguished is not your life, not your personality, not your capacity for joy. What is extinguished are the three fires that fuel all of our suffering. The fire of greed, the burning, insatiable thirst of tanha that has us always wanting more, always grasping, never satisfied. The fire of hatred, the searing flame of aversion, of anger, of irritation, of pushing away any experience we find unpleasant. And the fire of delusion, the smoldering, smoky fire of ignorance, the fundamental confusion that leads us to see the world through a distorted lens, believing that impermanent things are permanent, that unsatisfying things can bring lasting satisfaction, and that there is a solid, separate self where there is only a fluid, interconnected process. Our ordinary life is lived in the heat of these three fires. They are the source of our agitation, our restlessness, our anxiety. They are the furnace that forges the chains of our own unhappiness. Nirvana is simply the state of coolness, clarity, and profound peace that remains when these three fires have been completely blown out. It is not an exotic state. It is the end of agitation. It is the mind returned to its natural, peaceful, and radiant condition. And it is not a promise for a future life. It is a possibility available to us right here, right now, in this very life. Perhaps the most beautiful and accurate metaphor for this truth is the sky. Imagine yourself lying in a field on a clear summer day, looking up at the vast, endless expanse of blue. The sky, in its fundamental nature, is open, spacious, luminous, and boundless. It is inherently peaceful. This is its natural state. Now, imagine the weather begins to change. Clouds start to gather on the horizon. They drift across the blue, at first white and fluffy, then growing thicker, darker, and more ominous. Soon, the entire sky is a blanket of grey. The wind begins to howl, lightning flashes, and a torrential rain begins to fall. If you were born on such a day and had never seen the sun, you might believe that the nature of the sky is grey, violent, and stormy. You might not even know that the clear, brilliant blue exists at all. But where has the blue sky gone during the storm? It has not gone anywhere. It has not been damaged, stained, or diminished by the storm. It is still there, just as vast and peaceful as ever. But it is temporarily obscured by the passing weather. The storm is a temporary event happening in the sky, but it is not the sky itself. Our mind is like this sky. Its fundamental nature, what some traditions call our basic goodness, or our Buddha natures, like the clear, open, luminous blue. It is naturally peaceful, naturally wise, naturally compassionate. The fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, and all the anxious thoughts, painful emotions, and reactive patterns they create are like the weather. They are temporary, passing phenomena that obscure our true nature. They are the clouds, the wind, and the rain. For most of us, our inner weather is so consistently stormy, and we are so identified with it, that we forget the clear blue sky of our own awareness even exists. We believe that we are the anxiety, that we are the anger, that we are the sadness. The spiritual path is not a process of trying to build a blue sky or paint the grey clouds blue. The sky is already there. It is already perfect. The path is simply the work of clearing away the clouds. It is the patient, compassionate work of letting the storms of the mind pass without resistance until the natural radiance of our own true nature is revealed. This understanding completely revolutionizes our search for happiness and joy. We are taught by our culture that happiness is something to be acquired. It is an external object. We must achieve it, earn it, or buy it. We must add more pleasant experiences, more possessions, more successes, more love. This is the logic of Tana, the logic of the thirsty ghost, and it keeps us on a treadmill of constant striving and inevitable disappointment. The third noble truth flips this entire paradigm on its head. It tells us that peace and joy are not things we need to add to ourselves. They are what remains when we take away the things that are causing us to suffer. True, lasting joy, what is called sukha, is not found by accumulating more. It is found by letting go. It is the joy of non-obstruction. It is the natural state. Imagine you are carrying a heavy bag of rocks on your back. You have carried it for so long, you have forgotten what it feels like to not carry it. You spend your life trying to find ways to make carrying the bag more pleasant. You add padding to the straps. You try to walk on smoother roads. But the teaching of cessation invites you to simply put the bag down. The happiness is not in finding better padding. The happiness is the relief, the freedom, the lightness that comes from no longer carrying the unnecessary weight. The fires of greed, hatred, and delusion are this heavy bag of rocks. Extinguishing them is the act of setting them down. This is the ultimate message of hope. It tells us that we are not fundamentally broken, flawed, or sinful. We are fundamentally whole, complete, and luminous, like the sky. Our suffering, as real and as painful as it feels, is a temporary, adventitious obscuration. Like a cloud, it can be cleared away. This means that liberation is not the exclusive domain of saints or sages from a bygone era. It is the inherent potential within every single human heart. It does not matter how long the storm has been raging in your mind, or how dark the clouds seem. The clear blue sky of your true nature has never been stained. It is waiting, patiently, to be rediscovered. We now have the complete promise of the great physician. The diagnosis of our illness has been made. The cause of our illness has been identified. And now, the possibility of a full and lasting cure has been guaranteed. We know where we are, and we know that a destination of profound peace and freedom exists. The final, practical, and most pressing question arises naturally. What is the exact prescription? What is the path we must walk, step by step, to extinguish the fires, to clear away the clouds, and to arrive at this state of cessation? This question leads us directly to the heart of the Buddha's practical teaching, the medicine itself. It leads us to the fourth and final noble truth, the Noble Eightfold Path. We have journeyed far. We began in the darkness of our modern anxiety, feeling lost and overwhelmed. The great physician of the mind then guided us, first to a clear-eyed diagnosis of our condition, the universal friction of dukkha, then to its root cause, the burning inner thirst of tanha. And just as we might have begun to lose hope, he offered us the most profound prognosis imaginable. A complete cessation of this suffering is possible. Nirodha, the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion, is not a myth, but a living potential within each of us. The sky of our mind can be cleared of its obscuring clouds. And so we arrive at the final, most practical, and most vital question: how? If a cure is possible, what is the medicine? If a destination of peace exists, what is the map that leads us there? The answer to this question is the fourth noble truth. It is the prescription. It is the map. It is the noble eightfold path. This is not a set of commandments handed down from on high. It is not a rigid list of rules that demand blind obedience. It is, as its name suggests, a path to be walked, a process to be lived, a set of skills to be cultivated. The word noble is significant. It does not mean that the path is only for the elite or the aristocratic. It means that the very act of walking this path is what ennobles a human being. It transforms us from a reactive creature, a slave to our conditioning, into a free, dignified, and awakened being. The path is not a single straight line, but a beautiful, integrated framework for living a life of wisdom, integrity, and peace. To understand its architecture, it is helpful to see that these 8 factors are organized into 3 essential trainings, like the 3 legs of a tripod that provide a stable foundation for our practice. The first training, the very ground upon which the other 2 stand, is sila, which means ethical conduct. This is how we relate to the world around us through our actions and our words. It is the practice of living in a way that causes no harm to ourselves or to others. Why does the path begin here? Because it is impossible to find inner peace if our outer life is in chaos. If our actions are causing harm, if our speech is creating conflict, our minds will be filled with the poison of guilt, remorse, and fear. A regretful, agitated mind cannot become calm and clear. Sila is the act of creating a peaceful outer environment, which in turn creates the foundation for a peaceful inner environment. This training in ethical conduct is composed of 3 factors of the path: right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The second training is samadhi, which means mental discipline or concentration. This is the heart of the meditative practice itself. Having established a foundation of ethical living, we now turn inward to work directly with the mind. This is the training that tames the monkey mind, that calms the inner storm. It is the cultivation of focus, tranquility, and unwavering awareness. Through this training, we develop the capacity to still the muddy waters of the mind, allowing clarity and insight to arise naturally. This training in mental discipline is composed of 3 factors: right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The third and final training is panna, which means wisdom. This is the penetrating insight that liberates the mind. Once the mind has been calmed and focused through the training of samadhi, and is supported by a life of harmlessness through the training of sila, it becomes a powerful instrument of seeing. It gains the ability to see reality, not as we wish it were, or as we are conditioned to believe it is, but as it truly is. This direct seeing is what cuts through the root of our suffering, the fire of delusion. This training in wisdom is composed of the remaining two factors, right view and right intention. Now, let us briefly look at each of the 8 factors that make up these 3 trainings. First is right view, the beginning of wisdom. This is the map. It is the understanding of the 4 noble truths themselves, seeing and accepting the reality of dukkha, its cause, its cessation, and the path to that cessation. It is the intellectual and, eventually, the experiential understanding of the nature of reality. Second is right intention. This follows from right view. Once we have the right map, we must orient our heart in the right direction. This means consciously cultivating intentions of letting go rather than clinging, intentions of loving, kindness rather than ill will, and intentions of harmlessness rather than cruelty. Third, we have right speech, the first step in ethical conduct. This is the practice of using our words to heal, not to harm. It means abstaining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh or abusive language, and from idle chatter that clutters the mind and wastes time. Fourth is right action. This is aligning our physical actions with our intention of harmlessness. It involves refraining from killing or causing physical harm, from stealing or taking what is not freely given, and from sexual misconduct that causes pain to ourselves or others. Fifth is right livelihood. This extends our ethical conduct into our professional life. It means choosing to earn a living in a way that is honest and does not contribute to the suffering of others. It means avoiding work that involves deception, exploitation, or dealing in weapons, intoxicants, or poisons. Sixth, we come to right effort, the engine of the path. This is the joyful and energetic application of our will. It is the conscious effort to prevent unwholesome, negative states of mind from arising, to abandon them if they have already arisen, to actively cultivate wholesome, positive states of mind, and to maintain and perfect those positive states once they have arisen. Seventh is right mindfulness, the heart of awareness. This is the practice we have already begun to explore. It is the moment-to-moment, non-judgmental observation of our body, our feelings, our mind states, and the content of our thoughts. It is the quality of being present, of being the watcher on the hill. Eighth and finally, we have right concentration. This is the practice of developing a deep, one-pointed focus of the mind. While mindfulness is a broad, open awareness, concentration is the sharpening of that awareness into a laser-like beam, allowing for profound states of inner calm and penetrating insight. It is crucial to understand that these are not 8 sequential steps, like rungs on a ladder that you climb one by one. They are facets of a single, holographic path. They are all practiced simultaneously, and they all support and deepen one another. Imagine you are trying to make a strong rope. A single strand of hemp is weak and can be snapped with little effort. This is like trying to practice only mindfulness without the support of ethical conduct or wisdom. It will not have the strength to pull you very far. But now, imagine you take 8 of these strands sewn for each factor of the path. You take the strand of right view, and you weave it with the strand of right speech. You add the strand of right effort, and you weave it with the strand of right mindfulness. You continue this process, twisting and braiding all 8 strands together. The resulting rope is not just 8 times as strong, it is exponentially stronger. It is a powerful, integrated cable, with the strength to pull us out of the deepest abyss of our confusion and suffering. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. Right mindfulness helps us to notice our intention before we speak, thus strengthening right speech. Living a life of right action reduces mental agitation, which makes right concentration easier. The clarity that arises from right concentration allows us to see reality more clearly, which deepens our right view. Each part nourishes every other part. This path, then, is our map and our medicine. It is a complete guide to living a human life in the wisest and most compassionate way possible. It shows us how to purify our conduct, how to train our mind, and how to cultivate the liberating wisdom that sets us free. We have now seen the map in its entirety. Our task, for the remainder of our journey together, is to begin to explore its key features in greater detail, to walk the path itself. And any great journey must begin with the first step. In this case, the first step is also the foundation for all the others. We must begin with right view, the cultivation of wisdom. To see the world correctly, we must first understand its most fundamental characteristics. We begin by looking deeply into the first great mark of existence, the one that touches everything we know and everything we are. We begin with the truth of impermanence. We stand now at the head of the trail, the beginning of the Noble Eightfold Path. We hold the map in our hands. The first step, the one that illuminates all the others, is right view, the cultivation of a mind that sees the world not as it wishes it were, but as it truly is. To see reality clearly, we must first understand its most fundamental laws, its basic texture. The teachings point to three great characteristics of all phenomenal existence. The three marks of existence. These are anicca, the truth of impermanence; dukkha, the truth of unsatisfactoriness, which we have already diagnosed; and anatta, the truth of no self. We begin our deep dive with the most direct, the most observable, the most undeniable of these three great truths. We begin with anicca, impermanence. The law of anicca states that everything that comes into being is subject to change and dissolution. Everything is in a constant state of flux. There is nothing in the entire cosmos that you can point to that is solid, stable, and permanent. Nothing. This is not a philosophical speculation. It is a direct observation of reality, available to us in every single moment. Look first at your own body. We tend to think of it as a solid, continuous thing, the same me that it was yesterday and will be tomorrow. But science affirms what the sages have always known. Your body is a swirling vortex of change. Billions of cells are dying and being born within you in the time it takes to draw a single breath. The skin you have today is not the skin you had a month ago. The very bones of your skeleton are constantly being broken down and rebuilt. You are not a static entity. You are a process, a river of biological activity. The breath itself is a perfect, miniature teaching of anicca. An in-breath arises. It persists for a moment, and then it ceases, making way for the out-breath, which follows the exact same pattern, arising, persisting, and ceasing. This is the rhythm of the universe, playing out in your own body. Now, turn your gaze inward, to the landscape of your mind. Is there anything permanent there? A thought appears, seemingly from nowhere. It might be a memory, a plan, a judgment. It holds your attention for a few seconds, or perhaps a few minutes, and then, just as mysteriously as it appeared, it vanishes. An emotion swells in your heart. It might be a wave of joy, a pang of sadness, a flash of irritation. It can feel all-consuming, as if it will last forever, but it does not. It, too, subsides. A mood can color your entire perception of the world for a few hours, or even a few days. making everything seem bright and hopeful, or dark and grim. And then it shifts, giving way to another mood. Your mind is not a solid object. It is a ceaseless flow of perceptions, sensations, thoughts, and feelings, constantly arising and passing away, like clouds drifting across the sky. Now, expand your view to the world around you. The seasons turn, one into the other, in an endless cycle of birth, growth, decay, and death. A mighty mountain seems the very symbol of permanence. Yet over millennia, it is worn down into dust by the patient work of wind and rain. The sun itself, which seems like an eternal fixture in our sky, is a star that is burning through its fuel and will one day exhaust itself and die. Great empires rise, they flourish, they seem invincible, and then they crumble. Relationships begin in a bloom of affection. They change, they deepen, or they wither. Everything you can see, everything you can touch, everything you can know, is part of this universal dance of flux. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "You can never step into the same river twice." This is the perfect expression of anicca. The river is always flowing, always changing. The person who is you is also always flowing, always changing. The entire universe is a single, vast, flowing river. If this is the fundamental, undeniable law of existence, why does it cause us so much pain? If change is the nature of everything, why do we suffer so much from it? The suffering does not come from the change itself. It comes from our resistance to it. It comes from our profound, deep-seated desire for permanence in a world that is inherently impermanent. We are trying to build a solid, permanent house on the banks of a flowing river, and then we are shocked and distraught when the waters rise and wash it away. This resistance manifests in two primary ways that cause us immense suffering: clinging and aversion. When we experience something pleasanter, joyful moment, a loving relationship, our youth and health, a period of success, we cling to it. We grasp it with a white-knuckled grip, terrified of it changing. We try to freeze the river. We say, "This is good. I want it to stay like this forever." But this very act of clinging creates a subtle, underlying anxiety, a constant fear of loss. We cannot fully enjoy the beautiful flower in our hand because we are so preoccupied with the fear that it will wilt. The suffering is born not from the flower, but from our desperate attempt to prevent the inevitable. The other side of this coin is aversion. When we experience something unpleasanter, difficult emotion, a painful illness, a financial setback, a conflict with another person, we resist it. We push it away with all our might. We say, "This is bad. I want it to go away right now." We deny it. We fight it. We try to swim with all our strength against the current of the river. But this struggle is exhausting. It drains our energy and magnifies our suffering. By resisting the unpleasant experience, we give it more power, more solidity. We get stuck in a battle with reality itself, a battle we can never win. We are at war with the fundamental nature of the universe. There is a story of a great Zen master walking through a forest with his young student on a crisp autumn afternoon. The ground was a carpet of gold and red leaves. A single, perfect, yellow leaf detached itself from a high branch and spiraled gently down, landing at the master's feet. The student, seeing this, felt a wave of melancholy wash over him. "Master," he said, "it is sad to see this beautiful leaf die, to see the signs of decay all around us." The master picked up the leaf, holding it gently in his palm. He smiled and said, "This leaf does not make me sad. I have been enjoying its beauty all year. But you see, I understood that this leaf was already dead back in the summer, when it was at its most green and vibrant. I knew then that its nature was to change, to fade, and to fall. Because I understood its impermanence, I was able to appreciate its life fully, without clinging. And now, I can appreciate its death fully, without sorrow. This is not an end. This is a transformation. This leaf will nourish the earth, which will in turn nourish the tree, which will in turn give birth to new leaves next spring. This is the wisdom of Anika. It is the wisdom of the old farmer, who simply said, maybe. It is the understanding that everything has its season. It is the letting go of our war with what is. When we can truly, deeply accept the truth of impermanence, not just as an idea, but as a felt reality in our own bones, something remarkable happens. It does not lead to a feeling of depression or nihilism. It leads to a profound sense of liberation. The fear of loss begins to fade, because we understand that nothing was ever truly ours to begin with. Everything is a temporary gift, a passing loan from the universe. And paradoxically, this understanding allows us to love and appreciate everything more deeply. We know that this moment, this conversation, this sensation, this person will never be exactly this way again. This makes it precious. We stop taking our lives for granted. We begin to show up for the moments of our life with our full attention and our whole heart, because we know that the moments are all we have. We become more resilient, more flexible, more able to gracefully navigate the ups and downs of life. When difficult times come, we have an inner knowing that this, too, shall pass. When wonderful times come, we can savor them fully, without the poison of clinging, because we also know that this, too, shall pass. And so, we have taken the first great step into right view. We have looked at the world and seen that it is a flowing, changing, impermanent river. We have seen that our bodies are part of this river. Our thoughts are part of this river. Our emotions are part of this river. But this deep investigation naturally leads to a further, more profound question. If everything I can observe is in a state of constant flux, what about the observer? What about the me who is seeing all of this? Surely, there must be something solid and unchanging at the center of it all. Surely there is a permanent soul, a continuous self, who is the thinker of the thoughts and the feeler of the feelings. Is this central I the one fixed point in a changing universe? Or is the watcher also part of the river? This question, which strikes at the very heart of our identity, is the gateway to the next great mark of existence, the truth of anatta, or no, self. We have been walking the path of right view, learning to see reality as it is. Our first great lesson was the truth of anicca, the universal law of impermanence. We saw that everything we can perceive are bodies, our thoughts, our emotions, the world around us, like a flowing river in a constant state of flux. This realization naturally brings us to a deeper, more personal, and perhaps more unsettling question. If everything is a flowing river, what about the one who is watching? What about the sense of me that seems to be at the very center of our experience? Surely, this I is the solid ground on the riverbank, the one permanent thing in a changing world. It feels so real, so solid, so continuous. But is it? The Buddha's answer to this question is the second great mark of existence. It is the most radical, the most challenging, and ultimately, the most liberating of his insights. It is the teaching of anatta, or no self. Let us be very clear from the outset. This teaching is not a declaration that you do not exist. It is not nihilism. You are here, reading these words, breathing, thinking, feeling. The teaching of anatta is not a denial of your existence, but a precise and profound insight into the nature of your existence. It suggests that if we go looking for a solid, separate, continuous, and unchanging self or soul at the core of our being, we will not find one. What we call the self is not a static entity, but a dynamic process. It is not a noun, but a verb. To understand this, the teachings invite us to become investigators, to deconstruct our own experience and see what it is actually made of. This investigation reveals that what we call a self is a temporary combination of 5 interacting processes, known as the 5 aggregates, or skandhas. Imagine your sense of self is like a great corporation with a powerful figurehead known as Me, Incorporated. We believe there is a CEO sitting in a corner office, making all the decisions, a single entity in charge. The practice of anatta is like conducting a thorough audit of this corporation. We go looking for this CEO, but what we find is not a single person, but 5 different, interconnected departments, all working together. The first is the department of form. This is your physical body, the flesh, bones, blood, and breath. Is this department the CEO? We have already seen from our investigation into anicca that the body is in a constant state of flux. It is not the same from one day to the next. So, the permanent self cannot be found in the body. The second is the department of feeling. This department is responsible for all the raw data of sensation. It constantly reports whether an experience is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A cool breeze is pleasant. A harsh word is unpleasant. The feeling of your clothes on your skin is neutral. Are you your feelings? Clearly not. Feelings are like the weather, changing from moment to moment. No feeling is permanent enough to be a solid self. The third is the department of perception. This is the department that takes the raw data from the feeling department and labels it. It recognizes blue. It identifies tree. It puts the name sadness to an unpleasant feeling. It is the mind's function of recognition and categorization. Are you your perceptions? Number. Like feelings, perceptions are fleeting mental events, arising and ceasing in an instant. The fourth, and a very busy department, is the department of mental formations. This department includes all of our habits, biases, opinions, beliefs, memories, and most importantly, our intentions and volitional actions. This is the chattering of the monkey mind, the planning, worrying, judging, and desiring. This department is what generates most of our karma. Are you these mental formations? We have already seen, in our practice of being the watcher on the hill, that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness in which the thoughts appear. So, the self cannot be found here either. Finally, we come to the fifth department, consciousness. This is the raw capacity of awareness itself, the light that allows seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and thinking to happen. This might seem like the final candidate for the CEO, the permanent soul we have been looking for. But the teaching makes a subtle and crucial point here. Consciousness is not a single, monolithic entity. It, too, is conditioned and dependent. There is seeing consciousness, which depends on having eyes and an object of sight. There is hearing consciousness, which depends on ears and a sound. Consciousness does not exist in a vacuum. It arises in relationship to an object. It is also part of the flow. So, after our thorough audit of Me, Incorporated, we find that there is no CEO in the corner office. There is no central, independent entity in charge. What we call the self is simply the name we give to the dynamic, flowing, interdependent functioning of these 5 departments. It is a process, not a thing. Why is this so important? Because this fictional CEO, this belief in a solid, separate self, is the source of the vast majority of our suffering. The ego, this sense of I, is inherently insecure. On some deep level, it knows it is an imposter, a temporary construct, pretending to be a permanent king. And because it is insecure, it spends all of its energy on a desperate, lifelong project of self-preservation. It craves praise, recognition, and validation, treating them like positive quarterly reports that prove its existence. It is terrified of criticism, failure, and being ignored, treating them like a stock market crash that threatens its very survival. It constantly compares itself to other selves, driven by envy and pride. It builds rigid walls of identity. I am an intelligent person. I am a spiritual person. I am a victim, and then suffers whenever reality challenges these definitions. This constant project of defending, promoting, and worrying about this fictional CEO is exhausting. It is the root of our defensiveness, our arrogance, our shame, and our deepest anxieties. There is a famous dialogue from an ancient Buddhist text that illustrates this perfectly. A Greco-Indian king named Milinda, a man known for his sharp intellect, sought out a Buddhist sage named Nagasena to debate this very point. After the initial greetings, King Milinda asked Nagasena what his name was. Nagasena replied that his name was just a conventional term, a label, and that there was no permanent person to be found behind it. The king, a skilled debater, immediately challenged him. Pointing to his magnificent royal chariot, he asked, "Reverend Sir, if you arrived here in a chariot, please explain to me what a chariot is. Is it the wheels? Is it the axle? Is it the reins? Is it the frame? Is it the yoke?" To each question, Nagasena calmly answered, "No, Your Majesty." The king, triumphant, declared, "Then, sir, there is no such thing as a chariot." Nagasena then gently turned the tables. He asked the king, "Your Majesty, is the chariot something other than its parts?" The king had to admit that it was not. Nagasena then delivered the final point. "Your Majesty, you have understood correctly. Chariot is just a convenient name, a designation we give to a collection of parts when they are assembled in a particular way. It has no independent, essential existence of its own. In just the same way, Nagasena is a convenient designation for the temporary assembling of the 5 aggregates. But if you investigate, no permanent, separate person can be found. This insight into anatta does not lead to a feeling of being erased. It leads to a feeling of immense relief. It is the ultimate act of letting go. When you begin to see, in your own experience, that there is no solid self to defend, the entire architecture of your anxiety begins to crumble. Who is there to be insulted? Who is there to fail? Who is there to be embarrassed? When you are bumped into by an empty boat, you can smile because you realize that you, too, are an empty boat. The sense of being a hard, separate, easily bruised ego begins to soften. You become less like a rock and more like water, able to flow, to adapt, to connect with the rest of the world. The walls of self-consciousness come down, and genuine connection becomes possible. This brings us to a final, crucial point. If there is no self, does this mean our choices and actions do not matter? Does it lead to a life without moral responsibility? The teaching proclaims the absolute opposite. Because there is no fixed, unchanging self, and because everything is an interconnected flow, our actions become profoundly, unspeakably important. Every action, every word, every thought is a cause. a seed that we plant. That seed will inevitably bear a fruit, an effect, which will be experienced by the continuing stream of consciousness that we call us. We are not the same person we were a moment ago, but we are the direct continuation of that person. We inherit the results of our past actions, and we create the conditions for our future experience with our present actions. This understanding that we are a process, not a static entity, moves us from a fixed view of ourselves to a dynamic one. It shows that change is always possible. We are not defined by our past. We are shaped by it, but we can always choose to plant new, more wholesome seeds in the present moment. This reliable, impersonal, and dynamic law of cause and effect has a name. It is the law of karma. We have journeyed into the very heart of our own identity, guided by the twin insights of anicca and anatta. We have seen that our world, our bodies, and our minds are a ceaseless, flowing river of impermanent phenomena, and we have looked for the solid, unchanging self on the riverbank, only to find that it, too, is part of the flower dynamic process, a temporary collection of interacting parts, an empty boat. This realization can be unsettling. If there is no permanent me, and everything is in flux, what holds it all together? What prevents the universe from descending into a meaningless, nihilistic chaos? If there is no self, do our actions even matter? The answer to this profound question is the third great pillar of right view. It is the natural law that governs the flow of the river. It is the law of cause and effect, the principle of moral momentum that gives our lives both meaning and direction. It is the law of karma, like the other great concepts we have explored. The word karma is one that has been absorbed into Western language, and in the process has become deeply misunderstood. Before we can understand what karma is, we must first be very clear about what it is not. Karma is not fate. It is not a pre-written destiny from which we cannot escape. In fact, it is the very opposite of fatalism. Fate implies that we are powerless, that our future is sealed. Karma implies that we are powerful, that the future is being created by us, right now, in this very moment. Karma is also not a system of cosmic justice, meted out by some divine judgmental being. There is no celestial court weighing our good and bad deeds and handing down rewards and punishments. The law of karma is as impersonal and as reliable as the law of gravity. If you hold a stone in your hand and you let it go, it falls. The stone is not being punished. It is simply experiencing the natural, inevitable consequence of a cause. In the same way, karma is the natural, psychological consequence of our own actions. There is no external judge, because no judge is needed. The most common misunderstanding is that karma is a simple, one-to-one cosmic accounting system, that if you do something good will happen to you, and if you do something bad will happen to you. This can lead to a very simplistic and often disappointing view of the world. A kind and generous person may still face terrible illness, while a cruel and selfish person may live a life of wealth and luxury. If we see karma as a system of external rewards and punishments, this will seem unjust and will cause us to lose faith. But the true meaning of karma is far more subtle, more psychological, and more profound. The Buddha declared, in a single definitive statement, "It is intention, monks, that I call karma, cetana," the Pali word for intention, volition, or will, that is the heart of the matter. The karmic quality of an action is determined not by the external act itself, nor by its result, but by the state of mind, the motivation, the intention from which it springs. Let us explore this with an example. A skilled surgeon takes a scalpel and cuts deeply into a person's body. In another room, a violent criminal takes a knife and does the same. The external actions are nearly identical, a sharp piece of metal cutting into flesh. But the karma produced by these two actions is worlds apart. The surgeon acts with an intention of compassion, a desire to heal and to remove suffering. This wholesome intention plants a seed of kindness and clarity in their own mind. The criminal acts with an intention of hatred, cruelty, and greed, a desire to harm or to take something. This unwholesome intention plants a seed of violence and agitation in their mind. The result of the action, whether the patient lives or dies, whether the victim escapes or notice, a separate matter, subject to many other conditions. The karma lies in the quality of the intention that initiated the act. Our life is a continuous stream of intentions, and each one is shaping the landscape of our own heart. These intentions are rooted in the aforementioned three fires. Unwholesome karma, which leads to future suffering, agitation, and darkness, is any action of body, speech, or mind that is motivated by greed, hatred, or delusion. Wholesome karma, which leads to future happiness, peace, and clarity, is any action motivated by their opposites, by non-greed, which manifests as generosity and letting go, by non-hatred, which manifests as loving kindness and compassion, and by non-delusion, which manifests as wisdom and understanding. We plant these karmic seeds through three doors of action: the door of the body, the door of speech, and the door of the mind. The actions of the body are the most obvious. An act of violence plants a seed of violence. An act of generosity plants a seed of generosity. The actions of speech are incredibly potent. A word spoken in anger can create conflict and pain that lasts for years, planting a seed of bitterness in both our own mind and the mind of another. A word of praise, of forgiveness, of truth can heal and uplift, planting a seed of peace. But the most important and subtle door is the mind itself. Even a thought of ill will that is never spoken or acted upon is a karmic act. Why? Because it conditions the mind. It is like practicing a mental habit. If you constantly rehearse thoughts of resentment, you are training your mind to be a resentful place. You are watering the seeds of bitterness. Conversely, a silent thought of goodwill towards another person is a wholesome karmic act. It trains the mind in kindness, watering the seeds of love. The mind is the source of all karma because it is where intention is born. Imagine your mind is a vast, fertile field. Every moment, you are the farmer of this field. Every thought, every word, and every deed is a seed that you are planting. A farmer who acts from delusion and short-sightedness might scatter seeds of thorns, of poison ivy, of bitter weeds. These are our actions rooted in greed, hatred, and confusion. It may seem easy at the time, requiring little care or mindfulness. Another farmer, acting with wisdom and foresight, patiently and deliberately plants seeds of nourishing wheat, of sweet mangoes, of fragrant jasmine flowers. These are our actions rooted in generosity, compassion, and understanding. This requires effort, attention, and care. Now, the law of nature, the law of karma, is simple. When the harvest time comes, the first farmer cannot go to his field of thorns and, through prayer or complaint or sheer force of will, demand a harvest of mangoes. It is impossible. The harvest is the natural, inevitable, and impersonal result of the seeds that were planted. He must live, with the thorns and the poison, the very world he created for himself. The wise farmer, meanwhile, enjoys a harvest of nourishing food and beautiful flowers. This is not a reward from an external God. It is the simple, beautiful, and predictable fruition of his own wise efforts. We are this farmer. Our life, our moment-to-moment experience, our general sense of well-being or agitation is the harvest. And we are planting the seeds for tomorrow's harvest right now. This understanding is the ultimate expression of empowerment and personal responsibility. The Buddha said, "All beings are the owners of their karma, the heirs of their karma. They are born of their karma, are related by their karma, and are supported by their karma. Whatever karma they do, for good or for evil, that they will inherit." This is not a threat, but the most liberating declaration imaginable. It means that your happiness is not a matter of luck or fate or the whims of other people or the state of the economy. Your happiness is in your own hands. You are not a helpless victim of circumstance. You are the creator of your world. Every time you are faced with a choice, you are at a karmic crossroads. In every moment, you have the power to choose. Will I react with anger or with patience? Will I speak a harsh word or a kind one? Will I act from a place of selfishness or from a place of generosity? These are not small, insignificant choices. These are the most important decisions we make in our lives. Each choice is a seed. Each choice helps to determine whether the field of our mind will be a thorny wasteland or a beautiful, nourishing garden. This empowers us to see our difficulties in a new light. When painful experiences arise, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" as if we are a victim of some external force, we can learn to see it as the ripening of old, unwholesome seeds. This is not about blaming ourselves, but about taking responsibility. Seeing the painful result of past actions motivates us to be more mindful and skillful in the present. And when moments of joy, peace, and love arise, we can see them as the ripening of past seeds of kindness and wisdom. This fills us with a sense of gratitude and encourages us to continue planting those wholesome seeds. We are no longer drifting aimlessly in the river of life. We have become the conscious navigators of our own vessel, using the rudder of our intention to steer a course towards greater peace, clarity, and happiness. We understand that every action matters. Every thought counts. We are sculpting our future self, our future world, with every intention we form in the present. With this profound understanding of the law of cause and effect, the law of karma, a practical question naturally arises. If we are the farmers of our own minds, what are the most potent and skillful ways to cultivate a beautiful harvest? How can we best live in harmony with this law? The path offers many tools: cultivating kindness, practicing generosity, speaking truthfully, but perhaps the most profound skill, the one that purifies our karma at its very root, is the cultivation of a mind that is not attached to the results of its actions. It is the practice of planting wholesome seeds with great care and attention, but without anxiously craving a particular harvest. It is the art of giving freely, without needing to be thanked. It is the wisdom of acting with love, without demanding to be loved in return. This is the art of letting go, the wisdom of non-attachment. It is the next great landscape we must explore on our journey. We have delved into the great law of karma, understanding that we are the farmers of our own reality. Every intention, every action, is a seed planted in the fertile field of the mind, a seed that will inevitably bear its own fruit. This realization places the power and the responsibility for our happiness squarely in our own hands. It gives us a profound motivation to live with skill and care. This naturally leads to the next question: What is the most skillful way to be this farmer? What is the secret ingredient that ensures the seeds we plant are not only wholesome, but that the very act of planting them brings us peace rather than more stress? The answer lies in one of the most subtle and liberating of all spiritual graces. It is the wisdom of non-attachment. To understand non-attachment, we must first clear away a very common and unhelpful confusion in our culture, which often equates passion with clinging and ambition with grasping. The idea of letting go can sound like giving up. It can be mistaken for indifference, apathy, or a kind of cold, detached resignation. It can conjure an image of someone who simply doesn't care, who has withdrawn from the messiness and beauty of life. But true non-attachment, as taught on this path, is the absolute opposite of indifference. Indifference is a contraction of the heart. It is born from fear and disappointment, a cynical turning away from the world that says, "Nothing matters anyway, so why should I even try?" It is a cold and desolate state. Non-attachment, or nekama in the ancient language, is a courageous and warm-hearted expansion. It is not about not caring. It is about caring so deeply and so purely that you are willing to relinquish your need to control the outcome. It is the wisdom to engage with life fully, to love completely, to work with diligence, but to do so without becoming addicted to the results. It is rooted not in despair, but in a profound trust in the flow of life, in the truth of anicca that we have already explored. Consider the act of a parent teaching their young child to ride a bicycle. One parent, operating from a place of clinging and fear, might hold on to the back of the seat forever. They love their child, but their fear of the child falling is so great that they prevent the child from ever finding their own balance. Another parent, operating from indifference, might simply push the child out into the street and walk away, not caring about the result. But the parent, who embodies non-attachment, does something different. They run alongside the bike, holding it steady, offering words of encouragement. They are fully engaged, fully present, fully loving. And then, at the right moment, they trust. They trust the child's innate capacity. They trust the process of learning, and they let go. They understand that the child may wobble and may even fall, but that this letting go is the greatest act of love, for it is what allows the child to discover their own freedom and strength. This is non-attachment. It is the highest form of love, free from the contamination of our own fear and need for control. This wisdom can be applied to every area of our lives. Let us start with our relationship to possessions. We live in a world that constantly tells us our happiness is tied to what we own. We believe we need a certain car, a certain house, certain clothes, in order to be happy or worthy. Attachment is not in the having of the object. It is in the tying of our identity to it. It is the difference between I am enjoying this beautiful meal and I am the kind of sophisticated person who eats at places like this. The first is a simple appreciation. The second is the ego clinging to an identity. Non-attachment allows us to use and enjoy the things of the world without being owned by them. We can appreciate beauty, comfort, and convenience, but our inner sense of well-being does not rise and fall with our possessions. We hold them lightly, knowing they are impermanent, and can therefore enjoy them more freely, without the anxiety of losing them. This principle becomes even more crucial and more beautiful when applied to our relationships. Does non-attachment mean we should not love deeply? No, it means we can finally learn to love purely. Most of what we call love is actually a mixture of genuine affection and a great deal of attachment. We love someone because of how they make us feel, because they provide us with security validation, or companionship. We subtly, or not so subtly, try to control them, to make them conform to our idea of who they should be, because we are afraid that if they change, our source of happiness will be lost. This is not true love. It is a business transaction. Non-attachment is the revolutionary act of loving someone for who they are, not for what they do for our ego. It is giving them the freedom to be themselves, to grow and to change, even if it means they grow in a direction away from us. It is wanting their happiness, even if that happiness does not include us. This is a fearless love, a spacious love, a love that is free from the poison of possessiveness, jealousy, and control. It is the only kind of love that does not in itself become a source of suffering. We can also practice non-attachment to our most cherished views and opinions. For many of us, our beliefs, our political views, our religious doctrines, our scientific opinions become a core part of our identity. We are right, and those who disagree are wrong. When someone challenges our beliefs, it feels like a personal attack. We become defensive, angry, and closed-minded. This clinging to being right is a massive source of conflict in our world. Non-attachment is the wisdom to hold our views more lightly. It is the intellectual humility to recognize that our perspective is limited, conditioned, and possibly incomplete. It allows us to listen to another person's viewpoint with genuine curiosity, rather than simply waiting for our turn to speak and refute them. It is the courage to say those three most difficult words: I could be wrong. This does not mean we become spineless or without conviction. It means our convictions are held with a spaciousness that allows for dialogue, learning, and growth. There is a simple, powerful image for the suffering caused by attachment. Imagine you are walking along and you see a glowing, red-hot piece of charcoal on the ground. You pick it up and hold it tightly in your fist. It immediately begins to sear your flesh, causing you excruciating pain. Now, you can spend your time analyzing the coal, wondering about its origins. You can blame the person who left it there. You can cry and scream and wish with all your might that the coal were not hot. But none of this will stop the burning. The pain is not a punishment from an outside force. It is the direct, natural, and immediate consequence of one single action, the act of grasping. The only way to stop the pain is to do the one thing that is entirely within your power. You must open your hand. You must let it go. The relief is instantaneous. Our attachments are clinging to our possessions, our need to control our relationships, our rigid identification with our opinions, our nursing of old resentments. These are the hot coals we are clutching in the fist of our mind. The suffering does not come from the things themselves. It comes from our grasping of them. Non-attachment is the simple, sane, and compassionate act of opening our hand. This act of letting go brings with it an incredible sense of freedom and lightness. Imagine living your life with your fists constantly clenched, defending what you have and grasping for what you want. It is a state of perpetual tension, fear, and exhaustion. The hands that are clenched cannot receive anything new. Non-attachment is the practice of living life with an open hand. The open hand can hold things gently. It can appreciate a beautiful object and then place it down without a struggle. It can caress another person with tenderness without trying to possess them. And because it is open, it is always ready to receive the unexpected gifts that life may offer. The immense burden of having to manage the universe, of having to control every outcome, is lifted from our shoulders. We can finally stop fighting the river and learn to flow with it. We can participate in the great dance of life with grace, with joy, and with a deep, unshakable peace. We have now learned the wisdom of sowing wholesome seeds through our intentions and actions. And we have learned the great secret of the skillful farmer, to plant with care, but to let go of the harvest. We have learned the art of emptying our hands of the hot coals of clinging, but the spiritual path is not merely an emptying out. It is also a filling up. Once we have created this inner spaciousness by letting go of what harms us, we are invited to consciously and joyfully cultivate what helps us. We are invited to plant the most beautiful flowers in the garden of our mind. The first, the most fundamental, and the most transformative of these flowers is the quality of unconditional, boundless friendliness towards all of life. It is the practice of metta, of loving kindness. Having learned the wisdom of non-attachment, the art of holding life with an open and gentle hand, we discover a new kind of inner spaciousness. We have set down the hot coals of our clinging and aversion, and our hands are no longer clenched in fists of fear and desire. They are open. The question that naturally arises is, what shall we do with this openness? What shall we cultivate in the new, fertile ground of our minds? The spiritual path is not just an emptying out. It is also a filling up. It is the conscious and joyful cultivation of wholesome, beautiful, and healing states of being. The first, the most foundational, and the most transformative of these is the quality known in the ancient Pali language as metta. Metta is most often translated as loving kindness. It is the sincere, heartfelt, and unconditional wish for all beings to be well, to be happy, and to be free from suffering. Before we explore how to cultivate it, it is essential to understand what metta is not. It is not the possessive, romantic love that is often the subject of our songs and stories. It is not a sentimental or transactional affection, the kind of love that says, "I will love you if you meet my needs," or "I love you because you are mine." Metta is far more radical and far more vast. It is a benevolent, boundless friendliness, a warmth that we can learn to radiate from the heart towards all of life, without exception and without condition. It is the love of a mother for her only child, expanded to encompass the entire universe. If we think back to the three fires that cause all our suffering, metta is the direct and powerful antidote to the second fire, the fire of hatred. Anger, resentment, irritation, and ill will cannot coexist in the same moment as a genuine wish for another being's happiness. They are like darkness and light. When you turn on the light of metta, the darkness of hatred simply dissolves. To practice metta, then, is to systematically uproot the entire habit of anger from our hearts, replacing it with a radiant warmth that heals both ourselves and the world around us. The cultivation of metta is a meditation practice, but it is less about silent observation and more about active generation. It is a practice of the heart. We begin by finding a comfortable posture, a position of relaxed dignity, and allowing the body and mind to settle, perhaps by following a few breaths. Then, we begin the first and most crucial stage of the practice, offering loving kindness to ourselves. This is not an act of narcissism or selfishness. It is a recognition that we cannot offer water to others from an empty well. We cannot share a quality with the world that we have not first cultivated for ourselves. For many of us, this is the most difficult stage. We are often our own harshest critics, our minds filled with a constant stream of self-judgment. The practice invites us to set this aside and to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a dear friend who is struggling. We silently repeat, in our own hearts, a few simple, powerful phrases. The traditional phrases are, may I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be happy, may I live with ease. We repeat them slowly, gently, allowing the intention behind the words to settle in our heart. It doesn't matter if you feel it fully at first. It doesn't matter if a voice of doubt arises. You simply continue to plant the seeds, gently repeating the phrases, offering yourself this gift of unconditional friendliness. You are learning to become your own best friend. Once we have spent some time offering metta to ourselves, and our hearts feel a little softer, a little warmer, we move to the second stage. We bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend. This should be someone we love easily and unconditionally, someone whose very image brings a smile to our face. It could be a close friend, a beloved family member, a respected teacher, or even a cherished pet. We hold their image in our mind's eye, and we now extend the same heartfelt wishes to them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. We picture them receiving this warmth, this benevolent energy. This stage is usually quite easy, as it allows the natural love we already feel to flow, strengthening the quality of metta within us. In the third stage, we stretch the muscle of the heart. We bring to mind a neutral person. This is someone we see in our daily lives, but for whom we feel neither like nor dislike. It could be the cashier at the grocery store, the mail carrier, a person we see on our daily commute. We often move through the world ignoring such people, treating them as part of the background scenery. This practice invites us to truly see their humanity. This person, just like us, wants to be happy. Just like us, they have their own struggles, their own hopes, their own dreams. Holding this neutral person in our mind, we offer them the very same wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. In doing this, we break down the artificial barriers of indifference and begin to recognize our shared human condition. The fourth stage is the most challenging, and for that reason, the most transformative. We are now asked to bring to mind a difficult person. This is someone with whom we have conflict, someone who has hurt us, or someone we simply find irritating. It is wise to start with someone only mildly difficult, rather than the person who is the source of our deepest trauma. With as much courage and sincerity as we can muster, we extend the same phrases of loving kindness to this person. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. This can feel difficult, even impossible at first. It may bring up anger and resentment. This is normal. It is crucial to understand what this practice is and what it is not. It is not about condoning their harmful actions. It is not about forcing ourselves to like them or wanting to become their best friend. It is a practice for the liberation of our own heart. By holding on to anger and resentment, we are the ones who are drinking the poison. We are clutching the hot coal. The act of offering metta to a difficult person is the ultimate act of self-care. It is the brave and compassionate act of opening our own hand, of dropping the hot coal of our hatred, and of freeing ourselves from the prison of our own bitterness. Finally, in the fifth stage, we make our metta boundless. Having radiated this kindness to ourselves, a friend, a neutral person, and a difficult person, we now begin to extend it outwards in all directions. We think of all the people in our building, in our neighborhood, in our city. May you all be happy. We extend it to all the people in our country, and then to all the people on our continent, and then to all the people on this entire planet Earth. We don't stop there. We extend it to all animals, all creatures that fly in the air, that walk on the land, and that swim in the sea. We extend it to all beings in all realms of existence, seen and unseen. We radiate this heartfelt wish from the center of our being. May all beings everywhere, without exception, be safe. May all beings everywhere be healthy. May all beings everywhere be happy. May all beings everywhere live with ease. In this final stage, the heart breaks its old, restrictive boundaries and becomes as vast as the universe itself. This practice of loving kindness is not a weak or sentimental exercise. It is a source of immense spiritual power. There is a story from the life of the Buddha that illustrates this. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, tried many times to harm him. In one attempt, he arranged for a ferocious, wild elephant named Nalagiri to be intoxicated and released onto the narrow street where the Buddha was walking. As the elephant charged, trumpeting with rage, people screamed and fled in terror. The Buddha's loyal attendant, Ananda, tried to shield him with his own body, but the Buddha gently moved him aside. He did not run. He did not prepare a weapon. He simply stood still, his heart calm, and he radiated a powerful, unwavering field of pure metta directly at the enraged animal. The ancient texts say that as the charging elephant entered this aura of loving kindness, something remarkable happened. Its rage began to subside. Its steps slowed. The madness in its eyes was replaced by a sense of peace. It came to a stop before the Buddha, knelt down, and was completely tamed. The lesson is clear. Loving kindness is not a passive virtue. It is a force. It is a shield that protects us from the arrows of our own anger. It is a power that can pacify the raging elephants of fear and hatred we encounter in the world, and most importantly, within ourselves. Through the practice of metta, we have cultivated a sincere and boundless wish for all beings to find happiness. Our heart, now softened and made spacious by this practice, has become more sensitive. So what happens when this kind heart, which wishes happiness for all, encounters a being who is not happy? What happens when we see someone who is in active pain, who is suffering right now? Our wish for their happiness then naturally transforms into a different, though deeply related, quality. It becomes an active trembling of the heart, a desire to see them be free from their specific pain. This movement of the heart, from wishing for well-being to responding to suffering, is the birth of the next of the four great abiding states of the heart. It is the birth of karuna, or compassion. Through the radiant practice of metta, we have opened our hearts, cultivating a boundless, unconditional friendliness toward all of life. We have learned to wish, with sincerity and warmth, for all beings to be happy. This practice softens the soil of our hearts, making them more sensitive, more porous, more alive. But as we move through the world with this newly sensitized heart, we inevitably encounter the truth that many beings are not happy. We see pain, we witness struggle, we hear the cries of suffering, both loud and silent. What happens to our loving kindness when it meets this pain? It does not retreat. It does not shut down. It transforms. The simple wish, "May you be happy," evolves into the active, trembling, and deeply engaged wish, "May you be free from your suffering." This transformation of the heart is the birth of the second of the four great virtues. It is the birth of karuna, or compassion. Karuna is often translated simply as compassion, but its meaning is deep and specific. The ancient texts describe it as the quivering of the heart in the face of suffering. It is a tremor of sensitivity, a responsiveness to the pain of another. It is a recognition of our shared vulnerability. To understand the unique power of karuna, it is essential to distinguish it from its two close cousins, pity and empathy. Pity is not compassion. Pity looks down from a position of superiority. It creates distance. When we feel pity, we are saying, "Oh, that poor person, how terrible their situation is. I am so glad that is not me." Pity reinforces the separation between us and them. It is often a subtle way of congratulating ourselves on our own good fortune, and it offers little genuine connection or relief to the one who is suffering. Empathy is a closer relative, but still distinct. Empathy is the ability to feel with someone, to resonate with their emotional state so deeply that we begin to feel their pain as our own. It is a vital human capacity, the foundation of all true connection. However, raw, untrained empathy can be a dangerous state. If we simply absorb the anxiety, grief, or despair of another person without any wisdom or spaciousness, we risk becoming overwhelmed. This is often called empathic distress or burnout. We see someone drowning, and in our desire to help, we jump into the water without a life raft and end up drowning alongside them. Our well-intentioned empathy becomes another source of suffering in the world, paralyzing us and rendering us unable to help. Karuna, true compassion, is the skillful and wise response. It combines the sensitivity of empathy with the spaciousness of wisdom and the benevolent wish of metta. It is the ability to feel for another without getting lost in their feeling. It maintains a healthy boundary, not of distance, but of clarity. When we feel compassion, we can stand firmly on the bank of the river, see the person who is struggling in the current, and extend a rope to them. We do not have to jump in and be swept away by the same current. We can be present with their pain, holding it in a warm, spacious, and non-judgmental awareness, while remaining grounded in our own well-being. This allows us to think clearly and to act effectively. Compassion is not draining, it is energizing. It is a boundless source of strength because it is not dependent on our own limited emotional resources, but on a deep connection to our shared humanity and a sincere desire to help. It is the courageous heart that can bear witness to suffering without being broken by it. In the great traditions of the East, this ideal of active, boundless compassion is embodied in the archetypal figure of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, a being who represents the perfected, compassionate heart that lies dormant within all of us. The story tells that Avalokiteshvara made a great vow to listen to the cries of the world and to postpone their own final enlightenment until every last being was freed from suffering. As they listened, the sheer volume of pain in the universe was so immense that their heads shattered into 1,000 pieces. But the forces of compassion reassembled them, giving them 1,000 heads to better hear the cries of the world, and 1,000 arms to better reach out and help. In the palm of each hand is an eye, symbolizing that compassionate action must always be guided by the wisdom of clear seeing. This is not a story about a god to be worshipped on an altar. It is a profound psychological map of our own potential. The Bodhisattva is a metaphor for what our own mind and heart can become. We all have the capacity to develop the eyes to see suffering clearly, both in ourselves and in others. And we all have the capacity to develop the arms, to reach out, to offer a helping hand, a kind word, a listening ear, a skillful and appropriate response to alleviate that suffering. Compassion is not a passive feeling of sympathy. It is courageous, creative, and engaged action. It is the heart in motion. Just as with loving kindness, the practice of compassion must begin with ourselves. We are often our own worst enemies, treating ourselves with a harshness we would never dream of inflicting on a friend. When we make a mistake, when we fail, when we fall short of our own ideals, the voice of the inner critic rises up, full of blame and recrimination. You're a failure. You're not good enough. You always mess things up. This internal cruelty is a primary source of our own suffering. The practice of self-compassion, or karuna for oneself, is the application of this same tender, quivering quality of the heart to our own pain. It is the ability to turn towards our own failures and imperfections with the same warmth and understanding we would offer to a beloved friend. It is not about making excuses or wallowing in self-pity. Self-pity says, "Poor me." Self-compassion says, "It is human to suffer. I am suffering right now. May I be kind to myself in this moment." When you are in pain, you can place a hand on your own heart and silently offer yourself the wish, "May I be free from this suffering. May I be healed." When you have made a mistake, you can acknowledge it with clarity, but also with kindness, recognizing that to be human is to be imperfect. This practice of self-compassion is what gives us the resilience to learn from our mistakes, to forgive ourselves, and to get back up every time we fall. It is the essential foundation for any sustainable compassion for others, because if we are at war with ourselves, we will have no genuine peace to offer the world. So we see that compassion is the heart's natural and skillful response to the presence of pain. It is how we meet suffering our own and that of others with wisdom, with courage, and with love. It is what we do when we encounter those who are not happy. It answers one side of life's great equation. But what about the other side? What is the heart's skillful response when we encounter not suffering, but its opposite? What do we do when we see others experiencing joy, success, and good fortune? All too often, our habitual, untrained response is the poison of comparison, which leads to envy and jealousy. Our heart contracts. Their happiness somehow feels like it diminishes our own. The path offers a direct and powerful antidote to this poison, a radiant quality that is the joyful companion to loving kindness and compassion. It is the practice of learning to rejoice in the happiness of others. This is the third great virtue of the heart, the quality of mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have learned to open our hearts with metta, the unconditional wish for all beings to be happy. We have learned to meet their suffering with karuna, the trembling and responsive heart of compassion. These two great virtues equip us to navigate a world of joy and sorrow. But there is a particular challenge, a subtle poison that can infect the heart when we witness not the suffering of others, but their success. What is our skillful response when we see others achieve the very things we desire? When a friend finds a loving partner, when a colleague gets the promotion we wanted, when we scroll through images of someone else's perfect life, what is the honest, immediate reaction in our own heart? For many of us, if we are truly honest, the feeling is not one of pure joy. It is a complex mixture of emotions, often tinged with a sour, contracting feeling. A voice whispers, "Why them and not me?" This is the voice of envy, the poison of the comparing mind. The spiritual path offers a direct and luminous antidote to this poison. It is the third of the 4 divine abodes, the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. Mudita is the genuine, selfless, and wholehearted joy in the happiness and good fortune of others. It is the ability to celebrate their successes as if they were our own. To the ego, this practice seems nonsensical, even threatening. The ego, our sense of a separate and solid self, determines its worth through comparison. It operates on a principle of scarcity, believing that happiness, success, and love our limited resources. It views life as a zero-sum game. If someone else gets a bigger slice of the pie, that means there is less for me. Their victory feels like my defeat. Their light seems to cast a shadow on my own worth. This comparing mind is a relentless engine of suffering. It locks us in a state of perpetual competition, breeding resentment and a feeling of inadequacy. Envy is a uniquely painful and self-inflicted poison. It does not harm the person we envy, but it corrodes our own heart, isolating us and robbing us of the very happiness we crave. It is a lonely prison of our own making. The practice of mudita is the key that unlocks the door to this prison. It is the radical recognition that happiness is not a limited resource. It is infinite. Mudita is the joyful rebellion against the tyranny of the comparing mind. It is the practice of learning to feel happy for others. Like the other virtues of the heart, mudita is a quality that can be consciously cultivated. We can train our minds to default to joy instead of envy. The practice can begin in small, simple ways. Start with someone you love deeply, someone whose happiness is intimately connected to your own, like a child, a spouse, or a very dear friend. When something wonderful happens to them, they achieve a goal. They experience a moment of pure delight. Make a conscious effort to fully participate in their joy. Instead of letting your own worries or desires intrude, dive into their happiness. Feel the warmth of their smile. Savor the light in their eyes. Let their joy become your joy. This is the training ground, where the feeling of mudita can flow easily and naturally. From there, we expand the circle. We can practice with people we don't know personally. You might see a group of strangers laughing together in a park, a couple holding hands and looking at each other with affection, a team celebrating a victory. The habitual mind might simply ignore these scenes or feel a pang of longing. The mind trained in mudita pauses for a moment and consciously acknowledges the happiness that is present. It sends a quiet, internal message. How wonderful for them. May their happiness continue. This simple act does something profound. It connects us to the ocean of human joy that is always present in the world, an ocean we usually ignore because we are so focused on our own small cup of happiness. The most advanced and liberating stage of the practice is to try and cultivate mudita for someone whose success we actively envy, or even a rival. This is not easy. It requires courage and honesty. The practice is not to force a feeling of joy that isn't there. It is to first recognize the pain that our own envy is causing us. See the tightness, the bitterness, the suffering it creates in our own heart. Then, we can recognize that this other person, just like us, simply wants to be happy. Their success is their attempt to find happiness, just as our striving is our attempt. From this place of shared humanity, we can try to form the wish, may their happiness continue. This act is profoundly healing. It is not about them. It is about freeing ourselves. It is about choosing connection over comparison and choosing peace over the inner turmoil of jealousy. There is a beautiful and simple image that captures the essence of mudita. Imagine a single candle burning alone in a vast, dark hall. Its flame is steady and bright. Now, imagine a second, unlit candle is brought to it. The first candle leans and shares its flame. What happens to the light of the first candle? It is not diminished in any way. It does not become weaker or smaller. It has lost absolutely nothing, but the total amount of light in the hall has just doubled. Now, a third candle is lit from the second, and a fourth from the third. Soon, 100, and then 1,000 candles are burning. The entire hall is now flooded with a warm, brilliant, and joyful light. The original candle, by generously sharing its flame without fear of loss, is now part of a much greater illumination. Happiness is this flame. When we celebrate the happiness of another, our own happiness is not diminished. We have simply lit another candle in the world. We have increased the total amount of joy. By learning to rejoice in the good fortune of others, we tap into a limitless source of happiness. Our well-being is no longer dependent only on our own personal successes. We can now be happy whenever anyone, anywhere, experiences a moment of joy. Our opportunities for happiness become infinite. This practice transforms our relationships and our inner world. We become the kind of person others want to be around, someone who genuinely celebrates their triumphs, rather than someone who subtly resents them. We free up the enormous amount of mental energy that was once consumed by comparing, competing, and feeling inadequate. We develop a heart that is generous, open, and at ease. We have now explored 3 of the great virtues of the heart, the 3 active and engaged responses to life. We have metta, the wish for all beings to be happy. We have karuna, the compassionate response to their suffering. And we have mudita, the sympathetic joy in their happiness. These 3 virtues are like the brilliant, warm rays of the sun. But what happens when the sun shines too intensely, without any clouds or atmosphere to temper it? It can become scorching. In the same way, these beautiful, active emotions, if left unbalanced, can lead to their own form of exhaustion. Our loving kindness can become a needy attachment. Our compassion can lead to burnout. Our sympathetic joy can become a frenetic excitement. These 3 warm, active virtues need a 4th, balancing quality to protect them and to provide the cool, stable ground in which they can flourish. This final, essential quality, the crown jewel of the 4 divine abodes, is the unshakable peace of upekkha, or equanimity. We have walked through the beautiful garden of the heart, cultivating the 3 great active virtues. We have learned to radiate the warm, unconditional friendliness of metta, wishing for all beings to be happy. We have learned to respond to their suffering with the tender, trembling heart of karuna, or compassion. And we have learned to celebrate their good fortune with the selfless, expansive joy of mudita. These 3 qualities are the sun, the rain, and the gentle breeze that make the garden of our mind a beautiful and flourishing place. They are the active, engaged, and radiant energies of a liberated heart. But what happens to a garden that is exposed to too much sun without shade, too much rain without drainage, too much wind without shelter? It can be scorched, flooded, or broken. In the same way, these beautiful emotions, if left unbalanced, can lead to their own forms of exhaustion and suffering. Our loving kindness can become a clinging attachment. Our compassion can lead to overwhelming burnout. Our joy can become a manic, ungrounded excitement. These 3 great virtues require a 4th, final quality to protect, to balance, and to ground them. This is the crown jewel of the 4 divine abodes, the unshakable and profound peace of upekkha, or equanimity. Upekkha is a state of profound mental balance, a stable and spacious heart that is not thrown off its center by the turbulent winds of life. It is perhaps the most misunderstood of all the virtues. Because it is characterized by a deep calm, it is often mistaken for its cold and distant cousin, indifference. But the 2 could not be more different. Indifference is a state of deficiency, a shutting down of the heart. It is a defense mechanism, born of fear. It says, "I don't want to be hurt, so I will pretend not to care." It is a contraction, a turning away from the world, a sterile and lonely fortress. Indifference is rooted in aversion and ignorance. Upekkha, on the other hand, is the perfection of feeling, not its absence. It is born not from a lack of care, but from a depth of wisdom so profound that the mind is no longer swayed by its own reactive patterns. It is a state of immense, courageous engagement with life, but from a place of unshakable inner stillness. Equanimity does not say, "I don't care." It says, "I care so deeply that I will not allow my own selfish reactions, my fear, my anger, my greed to cloud my judgment or disturb my peace, so that I can respond to this situation with the greatest possible clarity and compassion." Imagine a life or death situation in a hospital emergency room. An inexperienced and emotionally reactive doctor might panic. They might be so overwhelmed by their fear of failure and their sympathy for the patient that their hands shake and their mind freezes. Their emotional reaction, though well-intentioned, renders them ineffective. Now imagine a master surgeon in the same situation. She is perfectly calm. Her hands are steady. Her mind is focused. Her presence is a source of confidence for the entire team. Is her calmness a sign that she doesn't care? Of course not. Her calmness is the product of immense training, deep knowledge, and a profound commitment to saving the patient's life. Her equanimity is the very vessel that allows her immense care to be channeled into skillful, life-saving action. This is upekkha. It is not coldness. It is a radiant, spacious, and powerful peace that allows love and wisdom to act in the world without being destroyed by it. The traditional training ground for developing equanimity is in learning to meet the 8 worldly winds without being blown over. These are the 8 conditions, arranged in 4 pairs of opposites, that all human beings inevitably experience. They are the universal ups and downs of life. The first pair is pleasure and pain. The untrained mind, driven by tanha, frantically chases after pleasant feelings and desperately pushes away painful ones. The equanimous mind experiences both. It can savor pleasure without clinging to it, and it can endure pain with patience and grace, knowing that both are, by their very nature, impermanent. The second pair is gain and loss. This refers to our material possessions, our wealth, our status, and even our relationships. The reactive mind is elated when it gains these things, seeing them as an affirmation of the self, and it is devastated when it loses them, seeing loss as a personal failure or a cosmic injustice. The mind of equanimity understands the truth of anicca. It knows that everything is a temporary loan from the universe. It can enjoy gain without arrogance, and it can face loss without despair, knowing that our true wealth is not in what we have, but in the quality of our own heart and mind. The third pair is praise and blame. This relates to our reputation and how we are seen by others. The ordinary mind is like a balloon, puffed up by the hot air of praise and easily deflated by the sharp pin of blame. Our self-worth is entirely dependent on the fickle opinions of others. The equanimous mind hears both praise and blame, but its inner peace is not disturbed. It does not become conceited when praised, nor does it become defensive when blamed. It knows that the opinions of others are just that, opinions. They are fleeting and conditioned, and they have no bearing on our true nature. The final pair is fame and disrepute. This is praise and blame on a larger, public scale. The ego craves recognition and fears obscurity or public disgrace. It is a hunger that can never be satisfied. The mind of equanimity understands that fame is a heavy gilded cage, and that our true worth has nothing to do with whether the world knows our name or not. It is more interested in its own integrity than in its own image. To be able to stand steady in the face of these 8 winds is the very definition of a free and resilient human being. This profound stability of upekkha is not achieved through sheer willpower or by suppressing our feelings. It arises naturally as the fruit of wisdom. Equanimity is what happens when the teachings of impermanence, no self, and karma move from being intellectual ideas to being our lived, embodied reality. When we truly and deeply understand anicca, everything is constantly changing, we naturally stop clinging so tightly to pleasure, gain, and praise. Why grasp so desperately at something that is, by its very nature, slipping through our fingers, and we stop resisting pain, loss, and blame with such force, because we know that they too will inevitably change. When we truly and deeply understand anatta, that there is no solid, separate self to protect the winds of praise and blame, lose their power to harm us. If there is no permanent me to be praised, who is there to become arrogant? If there is no fixed ego to be wounded, who is there to be crushed by criticism? We can listen to feedback as useful information, rather than as a verdict on our fundamental worth. And when we truly and deeply understand karmathat, our happiness comes from our own wholesome intentions. We become less dependent on the external conditions of the world. Our sense of well-being becomes an inside job. We are more concerned with the purity of our own heart than with the fleeting praise of the crowd. Equanimity, then, is the beautiful, peaceful state of a mind that has seen reality clearly and has made its peace with it. Imagine a great, ancient mountain, its peak reaching into the clouds. It has stood in the same spot for millions of years. The 8 worldly winds have blown against it for all that time. The hot, pleasant winds of summer have blown, and the biting, painful winds of winter have howled. The winds of praise have whispered through its forests, and the winds of blame have raged against its cliffs. Storms of gain and loss, of fame and disrepute, have lashed its slopes with all their fury. And yet, has the mountain ever been moved? Has its deep, silent, granite foundation ever been shaken? The mountain simply is. It allows the weather to happen. It allows the winds to blow, but it remains grounded in its own immense, unshakable presence. The mind cultivated in upekkha becomes this mountain. The winds of life will never stop blowing. That is the nature of the world. But we can develop an inner stability, a groundedness, a profound peace that is no longer at the mercy of the changing weather. This is the ultimate protector of the heart. Equanimity is the spacious container that holds the other 3 virtues. It is the wisdom that allows our loving kindness to be boundless but not clinging. It is the strength that allows our compassion to be deep but not draining. It is the balance that allows our joy to be genuine but not giddy. It is the cool earth that allows the warm sun of metta, karuna, and mudita to nourish the world without scorching it. We have now explored the full flowering of the cultivated heart, the 4 divine abodes that are the pinnacle of a well-trained mind. We have examined the path of wisdom, seeing the world through the lenses of impermanence, no self, and karma. And we have explored the path of the heart, cultivating loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and the great, balancing peace of equanimity. We have, in essence, calibrated our inner world. We have learned to see correctly, and we have learned to love wisely. The journey now turns outward. The question becomes, how do we manifest this inner transformation in our daily lives? How do we bring this clarity and kindness into our interactions with others? The path provides a clear answer. We begin with the most frequent and powerful way we connect with the world. We begin with the practice of right speech. We have spent a long and fruitful time in the inner world. We have journeyed through the landscapes of the mind and the heart, cultivating the profound wisdom that sees reality as it is, and nurturing the boundless heart that meets the world with love. We have learned to see the truth of impermanence, to understand the illusion of the separate self, and to appreciate the dynamic law of karma. We have cultivated the radiant warmth of loving kindness, the responsive tenderness of compassion, the selfless joy of mudita, and the unshakable balance of equanimity. We have, in essence, calibrated our internal instruments and filled our inner well with clear water. The path now calls us to bring this inner transformation out into the world. The journey moves from the contemplative to the active. It asks us, how do we now walk, and how do we now speak? This is the training in sila, or ethical conduct, the great bridge that connects our inner peace to our life in the world. And the first, most constant, and most powerful way we express our inner state is through the door of speech. Therefore, the first practice of sila is the profound and life-altering practice of right speech. Of all the actions we perform, speech is perhaps the most powerful and the most frequent. Our words are not mere sounds, they are creative energy. With our words, we can build a palace of trust, or we can demolish a relationship. We can start a war, or we can seal a peace. We can crush a person's spirit with a single careless phrase, or we can inspire them to greatness with a word of encouragement. Every time we speak, we are performing a potent karmic act, planting a seed that will bear fruit in our own mind and in the world. Our speech is a direct printout of our mind. If the mind is agitated and filled with anger, our words will be sharp, cutting, and hurtful. If the mind is spacious and filled with compassion, our words will be gentle, healing, and connecting. Therefore, the practice of right speech is not simply a matter of policing our words or following a set of external rules. It is an active form of mind training. By consciously choosing to purify our speech, we are simultaneously purifying the mind from which the speech originates. It is a practice of profound mindfulness, a moment-to-moment choice to use this incredible power for the welfare of ourselves and others. The teaching outlines this practice by defining 4 specific types of speech to abstain from. By understanding what to avoid, we learn what to cultivate. The first pillar of right speech is to abstain from false speech, from lying. In its most obvious form, this means refraining from deliberately deceiving another person for our own gain or to avoid consequences. But the practice goes much deeper than simply not telling outright lies. It invites us to look at the more subtle ways we are untruthful. This includes the so-called white lies we tell to avoid minor discomfort, the exaggerations we use to make our stories more impressive, and the insincere flattery we offer to manipulate others. It includes telling only part of the truth in a way that creates a misleading impression. It also includes making promises we have no real intention of keeping, which is a form of lying about our future actions. The motivation behind false speech is almost always rooted in the 3 fires. In fear, the fear of being punished or disliked. In greed, the desire to gain an unfair advantage. Or in delusion, the desire to protect our fragile ego by presenting a false image of ourselves. The consequences of false speech are corrosive. It systematically destroys the foundation of all healthy relationships, which is trust. When we lie to others, they learn not to trust us. But just as importantly, when we lie frequently, we begin to lose trust in ourselves. Our own sense of reality becomes blurred, and we lose touch with the simple ground of truth. Cultivating a commitment to truthfulness, in contrast, creates a mind that is clear, confident, and fearless. It aligns our inner world with the outer world, creating a powerful sense of integrity and wholeness. The second pillar is to abstain from divisive speech or slander. This is the use of words to drive a wedge between people, to create disharmony and conflict. In its ugliest form, it is malicious backbiting, whispering poison into one person's ear about another. But again, its subtle forms are more common and require more mindfulness. This includes venting about a third person in a way that is designed to make the listener take our side and dislike the other. It includes participating in gossip, which creates an unhealthy sense of in-group and out-group, and often thrives on the misfortunes of others. It includes subtly framing information to make someone else look bad. The motivation for divisive speech is almost always rooted in the ego's desire for power and superiority. It can come from jealousy, from a desire to control a situation, or from the simple, ugly pleasure of seeing others in conflict. Divisive speech is a potent poison that destroys friendships, families, and communities. The practitioner of right speech, in contrast, consciously chooses to be a force for reconciliation. They understand the preciousness of harmony. They speak in ways that bring people together, that encourage understanding, and that heal old wounds. When they speak of others, they speak of their good qualities, and if they cannot speak well of someone, they often choose the wisdom of silence. The third pillar is to abstain from harsh speech. This is the use of words as a weapon. Its obvious forms are easy to recognize: shouting, cursing, insults, threats, and cruel, demeaning language. But its subtle forms are pervasive in our daily lives. Harsh speech can manifest as biting sarcasm that leaves a sting, as passive-aggressive comments that carry a hidden barb, as a condescending or dismissive tone of voice, or as criticism that is delivered not to help, but to wound. Harsh speech is a direct expression of the fire of hatred. It is the sound of an angry, frustrated, and impatient mind. Its motivation is the desire to inflict pain, to assert dominance, or to release our own inner pressure by dumping it onto someone else. The consequences are deep, emotional wounds that can last a lifetime. It shuts down communication and replaces connection with fear. The practice of right speech invites us to make our words like a gentle medicine, not a sharp sword. It encourages us to speak in a way that is soft, pleasing to the ear, and comforting to the heart. Even when we must deliver difficult news or offer criticism, we can learn to do so with a foundation of kindness and a genuine desire to be helpful rather than hurtful. The fourth and final pillar is to abstain from idle chatter. This is speech that is empty, pointless, and devoid of purpose. It is the endless gossip about celebrities, the mindless speculation about things we cannot know, the filling of every available silence with noise simply because we are uncomfortable with stillness. The motivation for idle chatter is often a restless mind, a mind that is bored, agitated, or afraid of being alone with itself. In our hyper-connected world, this has become an epidemic. The consequences of idle chatter are a scattered mind and a waste of precious time and energy. It keeps our awareness on the shallow surface of life, preventing us from engaging in deeper, more meaningful communication and contemplation. The practice of right speech encourages us to value silence. It asks us to speak with intention and purpose. This doesn't mean we can never engage in light-hearted, pleasant conversation, but it does mean that we become more mindful of when our speech is serving a purpose, whether that purpose is to share information, to build connection, to offer comfort, or to share joy, and when it is simply adding more noise to an already noisy world. These ancient principles have never been more relevant than they are today in our new digital landscape. The internet and social media have become vast arenas for wrong speech. False speech runs rampant as misinformation and fake news, and in the carefully curated online personas that present a false and idealized image of a person's life. Divisive speech is the very business model of many platforms, with algorithms that amplify outrage and reward political polarization and angry comment threads. Harsh speech has found a fertile breeding ground in the anonymity of the keyboard, leading to cyberbullying and a general collapse of civility. And idle chatter is the very nature of the endless scroll, a digital vortex designed to capture our attention with an infinite stream of triviality. The practice of right speech in the digital age requires an even greater level of mindfulness. The speed and immediacy of our keyboards, combined with the lack of face-to-face contact, makes it incredibly easy to plant unwholesome karmic seeds with a single click. How then can we practice this in a simple, practical way? There is a wonderful story from ancient Greece about the philosopher Socrates that offers us a perfect tool. One day, an acquaintance ran up to him and said, "Socrates, I have to tell you something I just heard about one of your friends." Socrates held up his hand and said, "Wait, before you tell me, I would like you to pass your story through 3 small tests. I call them the 3 sieves. The first sieve," he said, "is the sieve of truth. Are you absolutely 100% certain that what you are about to tell me is true?" The man looked uncomfortable and said, "Well, no, I actually just heard it from someone else." "I see," Socrates said. "Now for the second sieve, the sieve of goodness. Is what you are about to tell me something good?" The man replied, "Oh no, on the contrary, it's quite bad." "So," Socrates continued, "you wish to tell me something bad about my friend, and you're not even sure if it's true. Let us try the third sieve, the sieve of usefulness. Is what you are about to tell me going to be useful or necessary for me to know?" The man shook his head. "No, not really." Socrates then smiled and said, "Well then, if what you want to tell me is neither true, nor good, nor useful, why tell it to me at all? These 3 sieves is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Are a perfect, portable checklist for right speech. Before we speak, before we type, before we forward that email or share that post, we can pause for a single, mindful moment and run our intention through these 3 gates. If the words do not pass through at least one, and preferably all 3, of these gates, then perhaps the most skillful action is the noble action of silence. By committing ourselves to this practice, we transform our speech from a source of conflict and pain into a powerful instrument of peace and healing. We create a safer world for those around us, and we cultivate a mind that is clear, calm, and filled with integrity. Our words become a true reflection of our inner cultivation. But for our lives to become a seamless work of art, our physical actions must be brought into harmony with our words. It is not enough to speak of peace. We must live peacefully. This brings us to the next factor. On the Noble Eightfold Path, the essential practice of right action. Having learned to guard the door of our speech, transforming our words from weapons that harm into instruments that heal, the path of sila, of ethical conduct, now invites us to look at our physical actions. It is not enough to speak of kindness. We must embody it. It is not enough to talk of peace. Our very way of being in the world must become peaceful. This is the practice of sammakamanta, or right action. It is the art of making our every deed a seamless expression of our inner cultivation, ensuring that our conduct in the world is in perfect harmony with the clarity and compassion we have nurtured in our hearts. The great principle that underlies all of right action is ahimsa, the intention of non-harming. This is the conscious and compassionate choice to move through the world in a way that minimizes the pain we cause and, wherever possible, actively promotes well-being. The traditional formulation of right action is expressed in three fundamental precepts, three areas of our lives where we commit to this principle of harmlessness. The first is to abstain from taking life in its most direct sense. This is a commitment not to kill another human being, but the principle extends much further. It is a cultivation of a deep reverence for all life, a recognition of the spark of beingness in all creatures, great and small. It is an understanding that every living thing, from the smallest insect to the largest mammal, shares with us a fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This doesn't necessarily mean we must all adopt a specific lifestyle, but it does mean we must become more mindful of the consequences of our actions on the web of life around us. It is a practice that softens the heart and moves us from a position of dominance over nature to one of respectful participation within it. The second precept is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the practice of refraining from stealing. Again, the obvious meaning is clear. We do not take another person's property through theft or fraud, but the subtle applications of this precept require a deeper mindfulness. Taking what is not given can include wasting our employer's time, using company resources for personal projects, failing to return borrowed items, or taking more than our fair share of a common resource. At its root, this practice is an antidote to the fire of greed. It is a cultivation of contentment, honesty, and a respect for the efforts and possessions of others. By committing to not stealing, we train our minds to be satisfied with what we have and to find happiness in integrity rather than in acquisition. The third precept is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is a commitment to engage with our powerful sexual energy in a way that is founded on kindness, honesty, and respect, causing no harm to ourselves or to others. It means ensuring that all our sexual interactions are fully consensual and free from coercion or deception. It means honoring the commitments we have made to our partners, as breaking such trust is a source of immense pain and suffering. It is about seeing other people as whole human beings, not as objects for the gratification of our own desires. This practice helps to purify our intentions in our most intimate relationships, transforming them from a potential source of suffering into a field for practicing mutual respect, care, and deep connection. To live by these three principles is to build a life of profound integrity. The motivation for wrong action is always one of the three fires. Actions of harm are rooted in hatred or aversion. Actions of stealing are rooted in greed or craving. And actions of sexual misconduct are often rooted in a confused mixture of greed and delusion. By consciously choosing right action, we are systematically starving these fires of their fuel. The result is a mind that is free from the poisons of remorse, guilt, and the fear of being discovered. The Buddha called this the happiness of blamelessness. It is a deep, quiet, and unshakable joy that arises from knowing that our conduct in the world is clear and harmless. This blamelessness is not just a pleasant feeling. It is an essential foundation for deeper meditation. A mind that is plagued by guilt or agitated by fear simply cannot settle down into the states of calm and clarity required for wisdom to dawn. Right action, therefore, is not just a moral code. It is a practical prerequisite for spiritual liberation. The path of Sila then extends this principle of harmless action into the area where we spend the majority of our waking hours, our work. This is the practice of Samma Ajiva, or right livelihood. Our choice of how we earn a living is one of the most significant karmic decisions we make. If our work fundamentally involves causing harm, it becomes a massive obstacle to our own peace of mind, no matter how much money we make. Right livelihood is the commitment to engage in work that is not only financially sustaining, but is also in alignment with our deepest values of compassion and non-harming. The Buddha traditionally pointed to 5 types of livelihood to be avoided, as they are fundamentally based on creating suffering. These are dealing in weapons, as this work profits from violence and death, dealing in human beings, such as through slavery or human trafficking, dealing in meat, as this requires the slaughter of living creatures, dealing in intoxicants, as this profits from selling heedlessness and addiction, and dealing in poisons, which are designed to kill. In our complex modern world, we can extend this principle to many other areas. Does our work involve deceiving customers? Does it prey on the addictions or insecurities of others? Does it involve destroying the natural environment for profit? Does it create products or systems that are known to cause mental or physical harm? Any work that requires us to compromise our basic integrity, to shut down our empathy, or to knowingly contribute to the suffering of others would be considered wrong livelihood. To practice right livelihood does not mean we all must quit our jobs and become meditation teachers. It means bringing a new level of mindfulness and ethical inquiry to our work. It means asking, does my work serve life? Does it contribute to the well-being of others, or does it cause them harm? This can lead to difficult choices, but it is a path toward a life of deep coherence. Imagine a master carpenter. A carpenter who practices right livelihood is not solely focused on the finished product or the profit it will bring. Their practice is holistic. They choose their wood carefully, perhaps from a sustainable source, respecting the life of the forest. They care for their tools with a kind of reverence, keeping them clean and sharp. They approach their work not as a chore, but as a form of meditation, giving their full, mindful attention to each cut, each joint, each stroke of the sandpaper. They deal honestly and kindly with their clients, practicing right speech. The final piece of furniture is not just a beautiful object, it is the physical manifestation of a process filled with integrity, care, and mindfulness. This is the potential of right livelihood, to transform our work from a source of stress into a field of practice, a way to express our deepest values in the world. To align our actions and our livelihood with our heart's deepest wisdom is to discover a source of joy that the world cannot give and cannot take away. It is the joy of integrity. It is the peace that comes from knowing that there is no gap between what we believe and how we live. Our life becomes a single, seamless fabric. This unshakable inner peace is far more valuable than any amount of external wealth or success, for it is a treasure that can never be lost. Having established a foundation of harmlessness in our words and our deeds, we have effectively minimized the active harm we cause in the world. We have learned to be a peaceful presence, but the path of compassionate engagement invites us to go further. Beyond simply not causing harm, how can we actively be a source of healing and connection for others? The most direct way we do this is not through what we say or do, but through the quality of our presence when we are with another person. It is the practice of learning not just to hear, but to truly listen. This is the next great skill we are invited to cultivate, the profound art of deep listening. Having established a firm grounding in ethical living Through the practices of right speech and right action, we have learned to navigate the world with a commitment to non-harming. We have polished our words and our deeds, striving to make them a reflection of the clarity and kindness we have cultivated within. Our journey now takes us into a more subtle, yet profoundly powerful dimension of our interaction with others. It moves beyond the actions we initiate and into the quality of presence we offer. For it is possible to speak truthfully and act harmlessly, and yet still fail to truly connect with another human being. The final, and perhaps most generous act of sila, of ethical conduct, is the practice of learning to listen. In our noisy, frantic, and distraction-filled modern world, where everyone is broadcasting and few are receiving, the simple gift of our full, undivided, and compassionate attention has become one of the rarest and most healing offerings we can make. This is the art of deep listening. We must begin by making a critical distinction between the passive, biological act of hearing and the conscious, spiritual practice of listening. Hearing is a physiological process. Sound waves enter the ear, are translated into electrical signals, and are processed by the brain. It happens automatically, without any intention on our part. We hear the traffic outside, the hum of the refrigerator, the background chatter of a crowd. Listening, especially deep listening, is something entirely different. It is an active choice. It is a form of meditation in relationship. It is the conscious directing of our full awareness towards another person, with the sole intention of understanding their experience from their point of view. It is the generous act of setting aside our own inner world to create a safe, empty space where another person can unfold their own. To be truly heard is such a rare experience that when it happens, it can feel like a miracle. It is a confirmation that we exist, that we matter, and that we are not alone. To understand what deep listening is, it is incredibly helpful to first become aware of all the ways we fail to listen. We can call these the barriers to listening, the habits of the noisy inner room that prevent us from truly receiving another. The first and most common barrier is the habit of being the fixer. As soon as someone begins to share a problem or a painful feeling, our mind immediately starts whirring, trying to diagnose the situation and formulate a solution. We listen only for the data we need to offer advice. You should do this. Have you tried that? While often well-intentioned, this impulse to fix immediately invalidates the other person's emotional experience. They did not necessarily come to us for a solution. They came to us to be heard, to have their pain witnessed and acknowledged. When we rush to offer solutions, we are subtly communicating the message: your feeling is a problem that needs to be solved, and I am uncomfortable with it. A second common barrier is the habit of being the autobiographer. While the other person is speaking, we are not truly listening to their story. We are simply waiting for a keyword that allows us to jump in with our own. They say, "I had such a stressful day at work," and we immediately respond, "Oh, you think your day was stressful? Let me tell you about mine." We hijack the conversation, pulling the spotlight back onto ourselves. We are not interested in their experience. We are only interested in using their experience as a launching pad for our own narrative. This leaves the other person feeling unseen and unheard, their story treated as nothing more than a conversational prompt. A third barrier is the habit of being the judge. We listen through a constant filter of our own opinions, beliefs, and values. As the other person speaks, we are running a silent commentary of approval or disapproval, of agreement or disagreement. We are not listening to understand, we are listening to evaluate. This creates a subtle but palpable energy of judgment in the space, making it unsafe for the other person to be truly vulnerable or honest. They can sense that they are being measured against our standards, and so they will often shut down. A fourth barrier, closely related to the judge, is the habit of being the rehearser. This is the internal monologue of the debater. While the other person is making their point, we are not listening to the nuances of what they are saying. Instead, we are busy in our own minds, formulating our counter-argument, preparing our clever rebuttal, gathering evidence to prove our own point. The conversation becomes a competition, not a connection. We are more interested in being right than in being in relationship. And finally, there is the simple barrier of being the dreamer. Our body is in the room. We are nodding and making affirmative sounds, but our mind is 1,000 miles away. We have drifted off into a fantasy, a memory, a to-do list, or have been distracted by a notification on our phone. We are physically present, but mentally and emotionally absent. This is perhaps the most common form of not listening in our age of perpetual distraction. The practice of deep listening is the conscious and gentle setting aside of all these habits. It is the cultivation of a mind that has become, in the beautiful words of the Vietnamese Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, an empty bowl. Imagine a beautiful, simple ceramic bowl. Its greatest quality, its very purpose, is its emptiness. Because it is empty, it can fully receive whatever is offered to it. It can hold water, or rice, or flowers, or stones. It does not judge what is poured into it. It does not try to change it. It simply holds it, providing a safe and receptive container. If the bowl were already full of its own water, its own stones, its own opinions, it could receive nothing new. To practice deep listening, our mind must become like this empty bowl. We must consciously set aside our need to fix, our need to share our own story, our need to judge, our need to be right. We empty ourselves of our own inner chatter so that we can create a spacious, sacred sanctuary to receive the truth of another person. This sacred sanctuary is built with a few key qualities. The first is silence. We must become comfortable with pauses, with the spaces between the words. It is often in these moments of silence that the speaker gathers the courage to go to a deeper level. If we rush to fill every silence with our own noise, we deny them this opportunity. The second quality is presence. This means offering our full, undivided attention. We put down our phone. We turn away from the television. We make gentle eye contact. We orient our body towards the speaker. We are communicating non-verbally. At this moment, you are the most important person in the world to me. I am here with you. The third quality is the offering of reflective feedback. This is not offering advice, but gently mirroring back what we have heard to ensure we have understood. We might say, "So, if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like you felt really betrayed in that moment." This simple act does two things. It validates their experience, showing that we have truly heard them, and it allows them to hear their own feelings reflected back, which can bring immense clarity. Finally, and most importantly, is the quality of non-judgment. We listen with the same spacious, accepting awareness that we cultivate in our meditation practice. We listen not to agree or disagree, but simply to understand. We offer the other person the unconditional positive regard that allows them to be fully themselves, without fear of condemnation. This profound art of listening is not just a gift we offer to others, it is also a gift we must learn to offer to ourselves. We all have a noisy inner committee, the voice of the inner critic, the voice of the frightened inner child. the voice of the ambitious striver, the voice of the lonely elder. Most of the time, we are either completely swept away by these voices, or we are actively trying to suppress and ignore them. Deep listening to ourselves means turning this same kind, compassionate, and non-judgmental attention inward. When a difficult emotion like anxiety arises, instead of immediately distracting ourselves, we can pause and listen to it. We can ask it, "Where are you in my body? What is your texture? What is your temperature? What are you trying to protect me from?" We become the empty bowl for our own inner experience. We create a safe space inside ourselves, where all our different parts are allowed to be heard, acknowledged, and held with kindness. This is a profound act of self-compassion, and it is the very foundation of inner healing and integration. When we learn to listen deeply to ourselves, we stop being at war with our own inner world. Through our practices of ethical conduct, we have learned to be a source of safety and peace for others. We have learned to use our speech to heal, not harm. We have learned to act in ways that show respect for all life. And now, we have learned to offer the profound gift of our silent, receptive, and loving presence. We have, in many ways, cleaned up our relationship with the world of other beings. But there is one final domain of our lives that is often a source of immense stress, complexity, and suffering. One last area where our clinging can keep us trapped. This is our relationship with the world of stuff, of material possessions, and the endless pursuit of more. To complete our journey of creating a joyful and liberated life, we must now turn our attention to the final practice, the art of discovering freedom and happiness in simplicity. We have come to the final leg of our long journey through the inner and outer landscapes of a well-lived life. We have trained our minds to see reality clearly, understanding the profound truths of impermanence, no self, and the causal law of karma. We have cultivated our hearts, learning to meet the world with the boundless warmth of loving kindness, the responsive tenderness of compassion, and the selfless joy of mudita, all held in the unshakable balance of equanimity. We have then brought this inner cultivation into the world, purifying our speech so that it heals rather than harms, aligning our physical actions with the principle of non-harming, and learning to offer the sacred gift of deep, receptive listening. We have, in essence, learned how to live in right relationship with ourselves and with other beings. There is, however, one final relationship we must examine, one that is a source of immense stress, distraction, and suffering in our modern world. It is our relationship with the world of things, with the culture of materialism, and with the ceaseless, exhausting pursuit of more. To complete our path to a joyful and liberated life, we must now explore the profound peace that comes from the practice of simplicity. We live our lives immersed in a culture that is built upon a single, powerful, and deeply flawed promise that our happiness can be purchased. From the moment we are born, we are bombarded with thousands of messages a day, all telling us the same story. You are not enough as you are. You are lacking. But if you buy this car, you will be powerful. If you wear these clothes, you will be desirable. If you own this phone, you will be connected. If you live in this house, you will be secure. It presents a vision of the good life as a life of accumulation. This is the great modern sickness, the religion of consumerism. It promises us a heaven on earth, but the price of admission is a lifetime of striving, craving, and dissatisfaction. This entire system is fueled by the fire of tanha, the burning thirst we identified as the root of all our suffering. It is designed to keep us perpetually thirsty. The mechanism behind this trap is a psychological phenomenon known as the hedonic treadmill. When we desire something, a new car, for example, or mind creates a fantasy of the happiness it will bring. We work hard, we save, and we finally make the purchase. For a short time, there is a genuine thrill, a spike in our happiness levels. But then, something called hedonic adaptation sets in. The newness wears off, the thrill fades, the new car simply becomes the car. Our happiness level returns to its previous baseline, but the thirst, the underlying tanha, remains. So now, to get that same thrill, the mind begins to crave something new, something better. We need the next model, the bigger house, the more exotic vacation. We are running faster and faster on a treadmill, accumulating more and more, but our actual, sustained level of well-being never permanently increases. We are caught in an endless loop of desire, acquisition, fleeting pleasure, and renewed desire. This is not a path to happiness. It is a formula for exhaustion, for debt, and for a life spent chasing a horizon that constantly recedes as we approach it. Beyond this psychological trap, our obsession with possessions comes with immense hidden costs. We trade finite, precious hours of our one and only life, often at jobs we do not love, in order to acquire things we do not truly need. Our possessions then demand more of our time and energy. The large house must be cleaned and maintained. The expensive car must be insured and repaired. The sophisticated gadgets must be updated and protected. Our stuff begins to own us, filling not only our homes, but also our minds with a low-grade hum of anxiety and responsibility. We become caretakers to our possessions rather than masters of our own lives. And so, the path of wisdom invites us to consider a radical alternative. It invites us to step off the treadmill. It invites us to explore the deep, quiet, and profound joy of simplicity. It is crucial to understand what simplicity is and what it is not. Simplicity is not a synonym for poverty. It is not about self-deprivation or a grim, joyless asceticism. It is not a rule that says you must own fewer than 100 things or live in a tiny, bare room. That would be just another form of extremism, another rigid identity to cling to. Voluntary simplicity is not about what you lack. It is about where you find your joy. It is the conscious, mindful, and deliberate choice to curate our lives, to discern between what is essential and what is superfluous, between what genuinely nourishes our well-being and what merely clutters our existence. It is the art of discovering what is enough. The person who knows what is enough for them to live a healthy, dignified, and meaningful life is the richest person in the world, regardless of what their bank account says. The person who is constantly driven by the desire for more is the poorest person in the world, no matter how much they own. Simplicity is the ultimate form of wealth, the freedom from wanting. This is a practice we can bring into our lives in very concrete ways. It begins with cultivating a mindful pause before we acquire something new. Before making a purchase, we can learn to stop and ask ourselves a series of honest questions. Do I truly need this? Or do I just want it? What is the real motivation behind this desire? Am I feeling bored, or lonely, or inadequate? Am I trying to keep up with someone else? What is the true cost of this item? Not just its price tag, but the life energy required to earn it, and the mental energy required to maintain it. Will this object truly add lasting value to my life, or will it just become more clutter? This simple, mindful pause is often enough to break the spell of impulsive consumerism. The other side of the practice is the joyful act of decluttering, of intentionally letting go of the things that no longer serve us. This is not just a matter of tidying up our house. It is a profound spiritual practice of non-attachment. As we go through our possessions, each object becomes an opportunity for mindfulness. We can pick up an old piece of clothing and ask, does this still reflect who I am? Am I holding on to it out of a misplaced sentimentality or a fear of letting go of the past? We can look at a gadget we never use and see it as a monument to a past unfulfilled desire. With each item we choose to give away or discard, we are not just cleaning a closet. We are releasing a small piece of our past, letting go of a small psychic burden. The outer space we create in our homes is mirrored by a new sense of spaciousness and clarity in our minds. A simplified outer world directly contributes to a simplified inner world. There is a famous story from ancient Greece that perfectly illustrates the profound wealth of simplicity. The great philosopher Diogenes was a man who practiced radical simplicity, living in a large clay pot and owning almost nothing. His reputation for wisdom was so great that he was visited by the most powerful man in the known world, Alexander the Great. Alexander, the conqueror, the man who possessed immense wealth and commanded vast armies, stood before the philosopher who possessed nothing. Impressed and wanting to show his own magnanimity, Alexander said to Diogenes, "I am Alexander the Great. Ask of me anything you wish, and I shall grant it." This was the ultimate consumerist promise from the man who could deliver anything the world had to offer. Diogenes, who was at that moment relaxing and enjoying the warmth of the morning sun, simply looked up at the great emperor who was casting a shadow over him and replied, "Stand out of my light." This reply is one of the most profound statements in all of Western philosophy. Diogenes was not being rude or dismissive. He was making a powerful statement about the nature of true happiness. The greatest joy he was experiencing at that moment was the simple, profound, and absolutely free gift of the sun's warmth on his skin. Alexander, the man who could give him anything, was, in that moment, the one thing diminishing his happiness, simply by blocking the sun. It was a teaching that our greatest treasures are not the things that can be bought or given, but the simple, elemental, and ever-present gifts of life itself. A warm ray of sun, a cool drink of water, a deep breath of fresh air, a moment of quiet peace. This is the ultimate joy of simplicity. It is a shift in our value system. We move from finding our joy in what we can acquire to finding our joy in what we can experience. We begin to invest our precious time and energy not in accumulating more stuff, but in cultivating richer relationships, in learning new skills, in spending time in nature, in savoring the beauty of art, and in exploring the depths of our own consciousness. We discover that the best things in life are not, in fact, things. This practice is the natural and beautiful culmination of our entire journey on the path. Understanding Anicca teaches us that possessions are impermanent, so it is foolish to cling to them. Understanding Anatta teaches us that our identity is not defined by what we own, so we do not need possessions to feel worthy. Understanding Karma teaches us that true happiness is a result of our wholesome actions, not our material acquisitions. And the practice of non-attachment is the very heart of letting go of this material world. By simplifying our lives, we clear away the external noise and clutter that distract us from what truly matters. We create the time, the space, and the mental clarity to live a life of deep meaning, connection, and peace. We have finally come home to ourselves. Our long night together is drawing to a close. We began our journey in a state of overwhelm, feeling lost in the relentless noise and pressure of the modern world. Our inner peace feeling as fragile as a candle flame in a storm. We walked a long path through the landscapes of the mind and the heart, guided by a wisdom that is both ancient and timeless. We started by looking courageously at our condition, diagnosing the subtle and pervasive unsatisfactoriness of dukkha. We uncovered its root in the burning, insatiable thirst of tanha, and then a light of hope was lit with the promise of nirodha, the truth that a cessation of this suffering is possible. We were given a map for this journey, the Noble Eightfold Path, and we began to explore its terrain. We learned to see the world as it truly is, an impermanent, ever-changing river. We investigated the nature of our own self and found not a solid entity, but a selfless, interconnected process. We understood the great law of karma, realizing that we are the architects of our own reality, planting the seeds of our future with every intention. With this wisdom as our foundation, we turn to the cultivation of the heart. We learn to radiate the boundless warmth of loving kindness, the responsive tenderness of compassion, the selfless joy in the good fortune of others, and the profound, unshakable balance of equanimity. Finally, we brought this inner transformation into our lives, purifying our speech, our actions, our livelihood, our listening, and our relationship with the material world through the grace of simplicity. The journey has been long, but its central message is simple. Joy is not a prize to be won. Peace is not a destination to be reached. They are not found in the next purchase, the next achievement, or the next relationship. They are our natural inheritance. They are the brilliant, clear sky of our own awareness that is always present, just waiting to be revealed from behind the passing clouds of our confusion and craving. The path is not one of creating a new self, but of uncovering the true nature we have always possessed. Peace is not the absence of chaos in the world. The world will always have its storms. True, lasting peace is the discovery of a sanctuary of stillness within ourselves, a refuge so deep that the winds and the waves on the surface cannot disturb its quiet depths. This night Dharma talk is not a singular event. It is an invitation to a continuous practice, the practice of turning the gentle light of your own awareness inward, especially when the world outside feels dark. You are not a helpless victim of life. You hold the map, you possess the tools, and the capacity for boundless peace and wisdom resides within you at this very moment. You are the architect of your inner world. The journey does not end here. It truly begins. With every conscious breath, with every kind word, with every mindful choice you make from this day forward. Imagine a deep, clear lake. On its surface, it reflects the turbulent sky, dark, racing clouds, the flashes of lightning, the churning wind. The surface is agitated, alive with the drama of the storm. But if you could sink down, deep below the surface, you would find a world untouched by the turmoil above. In the silent, heavy, and profound depths of the lake, there is no storm. There is only a vast, luminous, and unshakable stillness. This place exists within you. It has always been there. It is waiting, patiently, for your return.